Chapter 1336. After Chu Luiyue and the others rested on the spot for a short while, they continued on their journey. The green jade token was almost useless, so it was put away by Elder Hua Feng. Other than that, they had no other way to contact the others in the academy. Thus, after some discussion, they finally decided to head to the hinterland of the northern region of the primordial world. The place where the heavenly square cauldron was most likely to appear should be there. If they walked there, even if they couldn't find the people from the academy, they would be able to meet people from other aristocratic families and sections. Perhaps he could find out what had happened from them. After the previous incident, they were all on high alert, afraid that the same thing would happen again. With their current strength, they might not be able to withstand it if they made a few more trips. Fortunately, everything seemed to have calmed down. After walking for a long distance, Chu Luiyue looked at the sky. The lead gray clouds were thick and piled together, and the world was dark. However, there were no signs of darkness. It was rumored that the northern region of the primordial world was in a special location. Coupled with the changes over the past 10,000 years, the climate was extremely different from other places. The day here was extremely long, and the night was only 4 hours long. The day was cold, and the night was even colder. It was indeed difficult for ordinary people to stay in such a bitter and cold place. As they walked, they suddenly heard someone talking in front of them. However, because they were quite far away, they couldn't hear what they were saying. Looking up, they could vaguely see a group of people walking forward against the wind and snow in a white snowfield. Their direction was the same as Chu Luiyue and the others, but perhaps because they were slower, Chu Luiyue and the others caught up. Who are those people? An elder tried his best to look over. Judging from their clothes, they don't look like ordinary people. They should be from a first-rate aristocratic family, right? Chu Luiyue followed his gaze and looked over. There were about a dozen people, including elders and young men and women. At this moment, the people in front seemed to have noticed something and turned around. Who are you? One of the elders was the first to speak warily. Elder Hua Feng's dantian was filled with anger. Lingxiao College's Hua Feng is here. A low and powerful voice spread far and wide. In the Divine Ruins world, the name of Lingxiao College was very resounding. Except for a few who had old grudges with them, most of the other first-rate families and sects had to give them some face. That was why Elder Hua Feng dared to boldly report his wealth. Sure enough, after hearing his words, the other party's attitude immediately changed. Elder Hua Feng. The other party responded, and his tone seemed to be quite surprised. Just as Elder Hua Feng was about to ask about their identity, he suddenly heard a young woman walking over. As she walked, she shouted joyfully, "Elder Hua Feng, so it's you." Elder Hua Feng and the others were still a little puzzled at first, but as the woman approached and they saw her face clearly, they immediately revealed happy expressions. Shirua? Shirua was out of breath as she walked, her face slightly flushed. "Yes, I am. Greetings, elders." As she spoke, Shirua bowed politely to Hua Feng and the others. In the end, she noticed that there was Chu Luiyue at the back and was stunned for a moment. However, she quickly came to her senses and asked with uncertainty, "What's wrong? Are you junior brother Chuyu?" When Chu Luiyue heard the elder call out her name, she already remembered this person's identity. Shirua, the second miss of the Meteor sect. When the academy wanted to summon people to the Dark Feather Abyss, Shirua was among them. Although the two of them didn't know each other, they had indeed met a few times. Chu Luiyue greeted her with a smile. "Greetings, senior sister Shirua." Shirua looked at her curiously, but her eyes were very restrained and did not have any intention of offending her. "I heard that senior brother Rongxiu is personally teaching you now?" Chu Luiyue was a little surprised that she would ask this question first, but she still nodded honestly. It is Chu Yu's fortune to be able to receive such concern from senior brother Rongxiu. Shirua couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. "He isn't willing to teach just anyone. To be able to make him value you so much, you naturally have your own ability. Besides, I also saw the battle between you and Jean Lei that day. You don't have to be too humble." As she spoke, she looked around and asked with some surprise, Why didn't Rongxiu and the others come with you?" Elder Hua Feng shook his head. Rong Xiu had something to do, so he didn't come with us this time. I see. A hint of surprise flashed across Shiru's eyes. According to her understanding of Rong Xiu, he would definitely come to this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She didn't expect him to not come this time. What about the other elders? Did you guys go separately? Shiru asked curiously. The expressions of Elder Hua Feng and the others changed slightly. Shiru immediately sensed something, and the smile on her face froze for an instant. We're also looking for them. Elder Hua Feng thought for a moment and chose to tell the truth. Lingxiao College and the Meteor Sect had always been in contact and had a good relationship with each other. If he told Shiru, they might be able to help. What do you mean? Although she had already guessed that the situation might not be good, Shiru still didn't expect Elder Hua Feng to say such a thing. After that, Elder Hua Feng briefly explained the situation to her. Shiru's expression gradually became serious. So now we don't know where they are. We can only look for them slowly. Shiru frowned. We've been here for about 2 days, but we haven't seen Elder Bo Yen and the others. Elder Hua Feng and the others had already expected this result, but they still couldn't hide their disappointment when they heard this. Elder Hua Feng, since it's like this, why don't we move together and look for them together? One more person is always one more force, right? Hearing Shiru's suggestion, the elders naturally didn't refuse. Now that they were alone and weak, wanting to rely on their own strength to find so many people in the academy, there was simply no hope at all. The remaining people of the Meteor Sect naturally agreed. After all, Shiru had the highest status among them. Moreover, the Meteor Sect and Lingxiao College had a good relationship. Due to various considerations, they should help this time. After a short discussion, the group began to move forward again. Chu Luiwei happened to walk behind Shiru to the right. She thought for a moment and asked, Senior Shiru, have you seen the Heavenly Square Cauldron in the past 2 days? Shiru shook her head. No. We haven't met anyone in the past 2 days. Chu Luiwei was a little disappointed, but she still politely thanked her. Shiru stared at her for a while and suddenly smiled. Chu Yu, Rong Xiu rarely treats someone so well. The last one was digression. Originally, I wanted to update 9 times today, but my period came. Moreover, I might have sat from morning to night, and my waist hurt so much that I couldn't sit still. Therefore, I stopped updating. I'll update at noon tomorrow, and I'll start updating at 5 times. Because I have to go out in 2 days, I won't be able to stabilize the updates for the time being. After a few days of adjustment, I'll work hard to save more chapters. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1337. Elder Hua Feng suddenly interrupted her. Shiru turned around. Elder Hua Feng smiled faintly. I heard that the Meteor Sect recently obtained a new divine beast. The topic changed so suddenly that everyone could see Elder Hua Feng's intention. Shiru's eyes moved slightly as she nodded with a smile. My father recently hunted a legendary 3-eyed eagle outside. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Elder Hua Feng obviously didn't want Shiru to talk about Rong Xiu's past. It should be related to her. In addition, she didn't expect that the Meteor Sect would also obtain a legendary 3-eyed eagle. What a coincidence! The legendary 3-eyed eagle has a noble bloodline. It's arrogant and fierce. It almost never interacts with the human race. It has never appeared in public in the past 1,000 years. It seems that your father has put in a lot of effort this time. Shiru smiled brightly. You're right. That legendary 3-eyed eagle is indeed very difficult to tame. My father has been torturing it for 3 whole months. Now, it has finally become a little more docile. Chu Luiwei suddenly felt a slight fluctuation in her body. It seemed that the legendary 3-eyed eagle had become a little anxious after hearing her words. Chu Luiwei comforted it in her heart, and it gradually calmed down. After all, they were of the same race. How could she not care at all? Moreover, the eagle in her body was once the eagle lord of the legendary 3-eyed eagle race. Another elder suddenly asked, What's the matter? If I remember correctly, you don't seem to have a contract with a magical beast yet? Shuru was a warrior, but she had never contracted a magical beast. It was reasonable to say that with her talent and background, it was more than enough for her to have a divine beast. However, she didn't choose to contract with any magical beast until she left the academy. Shuru pursed her lips and smiled. I already have one now. Before coming here, my father gave me the legendary three-eyed eagle. Elder Huafeng and the others were surprised. However, after thinking about it, they felt that it was reasonable. Shuru was the second young lady of the meteor sect. Therefore, he doted on her a lot. Therefore, it was normal for her to receive such treatment. No wonder. I have to congratulate you then. All right, you seem to have broken through again? Shuru generously nodded and admitted it with a smile. If it wasn't for this, father wouldn't have given me the legendary three-eyed eagle. Elder Huafeng and the others glanced at each other. It seemed that Shuru's position as the heir was basically secured. Right at this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the front of the crowd. There seems to be someone running towards us. The white-browed old man standing beside Shuru said. Alone? Shuru asked curiously. The old man with white eyebrows took a closer look and nodded with certainty. Alone. That was strange. In this damned place of danger, everyone was in groups, or at least in groups of 3 to 5. It was impossible for them to move alone. What was the difference between this and seeking death? It seems to be a woman. She should be alone. The old man with white eyebrows looked at Shuru inquiringly. Second young lady, this person, should we save her or not? Actually, he was inclined to not save her. Who knew where the other party came from? What if she was killed in the end after saving her out of kindness? Everyone's life was hanging by a thread in the northern territory of the primitive wasteland. What couldn't they do? Shuru thought for a while and shook her head. No need to pay attention to her. She paused for a while and said again. If she tries to get close, just deal with her directly. Yes. Her tone was very light. It was as if she was saying that the weather was bad today. However, this sentence determined the life and death of a person. However, the others present didn't have any objections. Everyone knew that kindness, at such a time, could very well cost them their lives. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but look at Shuru again. This second young lady, who was rumored to be the heir, was indeed swift and decisive. Just as the group was about to walk around to the other side, the woman in the distance seemed to have seen them. After a short pause, she quickly ran over to them. The old man with white eyebrows took a step forward. Just as he was about to stop her, he heard the woman suddenly shout anxiously. Elder Huafeng, save me. The group stopped in their tracks. Elder Huafeng frowned and looked back. This voice. It actually sounded a little familiar. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows and looked at the other party with interest. What a coincidence! Who would have thought that the first person they met in the northern territory of the primitive wasteland would be Jiang Jiwan? At this moment, the other elders also recognized her one after another. Huafeng, this voice, it sounds like Jiang Jiwan? It sounds like it to me too. It should be her, right? Why doesn't this face look like it? Elder Huafeng walked forward. Shuru suddenly advised. Elder, be careful. It was really suspicious for her to suddenly appear in this world of ice and snow. Even if it was really Jiang Jiwan, they couldn't trust her completely. Seeing this scene, Jiang Jiwan couldn't help but bite her lips. She quickly glanced at Shuru, and a trace of resentment flashed across her eyes. It's fine, I'll go take a look first. Elder Huafeng knew that Shuru was being kind, but he still chose to walk over. After all, she was a student of his academy. How could he not save her? Moreover, Jiang Jiwan had set off with Elder Bo Yen and the others. She might know something. Shuru could only say. Then we'll go with you. As she spoke, she gave Elder Bai Mei and the others a look. Everyone immediately followed. Elder Huafeng couldn't help but laugh. After so long, you're still as meticulous as before. Shuru's lips curved slightly. It's better to be safe than sorry. As they spoke, The group finally arrived in front of Jiang Jiwon. Jiang Jiwon looked at Elder Hua Feng and the others excitedly. Her eyes were red. "Elder, please save me." Everyone was stunned when they saw that unfamiliar face. Elder Hua Feng pointed at her and asked, "Jiang Jiwon? Your face." Jiang Jiwon suddenly remembered something and hurriedly explained, "That's right. Oh, this is a mask. I used it to hide my appearance." As she spoke, her hand fumbled around her chin for a while before slowly taking off a mask as thin as a cicada's wing. The face under the mask was indeed Jiang Jiwon. However, at this moment, for some reason, an inch-long scratch appeared on her left cheek. It seemed to have been slashed by some kind of sharp weapon during a fierce battle. The originally beautiful face was ruined by this scar, and it became a little terrifying. Coupled with her haggard expression and pale lips, she looked even more frightening. Noticing everyone's gaze, Jiang Jiwon remembered the scar on her face and hurriedly reached out to cover it. However, when he came into contact with the wound, his heart trembled and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Elder Hua Feng frowned. "Jiang Jiwon, what happened to you? Didn't you come with Elder Bo Yen and the others? How did you end up like this?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1338. Facing Elder Hua Feng's series of questions, Jiang Jiwon was speechless as tears flowed from her eyes. Anyone who saw it would think that she had encountered something bad and suffered grievances. However, Shi seemed to be indifferent to this and asked calmly, "We're not standing here to watch you cry. Answer Elder Hua Feng's questions and tell us everything clearly. Only then can we help you, right?" Jiang Jiwon felt as if a fishbone was stuck in her throat. She didn't know whether to cry or not. Tears hung on her face, making her look very awkward. Chu Luiwei glanced at Shi calmly. Previously, she thought that it was an illusion, but now she was sure that Shi didn't like Jiang Jiwon. It could even be said that she hated her. Moreover, it was the undisguised kind. And Jiang Jiwon seemed to be quite afraid of her. After being said that, she didn't refute and didn't even dare to show her dissatisfaction. "I really don't know what kind of grudge there is between the two of them. We came to the northern region of the Great Desolate Land together. Not long after we left the teleportation formation, we were ambushed. Who was the one who did it?" Elder Hua Feng asked immediately. Jiang Jiwon shook her head in horror. No one. It was the Xian formation." Elder Hua Feng and the others looked at each other and thought to themselves, as expected. That Xian formation was very powerful. Elder Bo Yen and the others worked together and barely managed to break it open. However, only a portion of them managed to escape in time. The rest, a trace of fear flashed through her eyes. At that time, the ground suddenly collapsed and after they all disappeared, the ground closed again. "I don't know how they are now." As she spoke, she couldn't help but cry again. However, as if she was afraid that Shi would continue, she hurriedly turned her head to the side and wiped it away. Elder Hua Feng asked in a deep voice, "How many escaped?" Jiang Jiwon's eyes flashed and she said hesitantly, About 56. About 56, there were more than 10 elders and 34 students. However, I didn't manage to see the exact number at that time. Everyone's hearts sank. 50 to 60, more than 300 people from High Heaven Academy had come. This time, more than half of them were lost, and their fates were unknown. If something really happened, it would be a huge blow to Lingxiao College. "Since you escaped with these people, why are you alone now?" Shirer asked calmly. Jiang Jiwon shrunk back and lowered her eyes. She looked embarrassed and sad. "I don't know. We were originally together. Elder Bo Yen said that he would think of a way to find those people, but we were soon attacked again. It was during that accident that I was separated from them. I don't know where the others are." As she spoke, she wiped her eyes. "If I hadn't met you elders, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to walk out of here." Her pitiful appearance was in line with what she had experienced. Elder Hua Feng and the others looked solemn. They thought that if they found Jiang Jiwon, they would be able to find some clues. However, it seemed that this path was not going to work. The other party was well prepared. They didn't even show their faces, but they had already tricked so many people from Lingxiao College. Jiang Jiwan alone might not be able to say anything. It would be very difficult to find the others. Where did you run from? Shi Ru'er stared at Jiang Jiwan and asked, "This place is covered in snow. Every step you take consumes a lot of energy. You shouldn't have walked far by yourself, right?" If they followed Jiang Jiwan's escape route, they might be able to find something. Jiang Jiwan was stunned and immediately bit her lip. "I was busy running and only knew how to run forward. I don't know how many times I changed directions and how far I ran. The snowfield here is endless. I really can't remember. Between heaven and earth, the scenery was dull and monotonous snow, as if there was no border. There wasn't even a reference point here, so it was naturally difficult to determine the direction and location." Shi Ru'er frowned and didn't say anything else. Elder Hua Feng said to an elder beside him, "Go and help her take a look at her injuries first. We'll continue after she's better." Jiang Jiwan's face was filled with gratitude. "Thank you, elder." Shi Ru'er turned to look at Elder Hua Feng. "Elder, can I have a word with you?" Elder Hua Feng nodded. The two of them walked to the side. Jiang Jiwan glanced over and frowned slightly. It had been so long, but Shi Ru'er still couldn't stand her. "I wonder what method she's going to use to deal with me this time. However, she seems to have brought a lot of people from the meteor sect this time, so I can't resist at all." Suddenly, her gaze froze. Only then did she see Chu Luiyue standing behind the crowd. "Chu Yu, why are you here?" Jiang Jiwan couldn't help but exclaim in shock. "Didn't Chu Yu say that he wasn't feeling well when we went out previously? Why is he here now?" Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. "Are you surprised that I'm here, senior sister Jiang?" Jiang Jiwan suddenly thought of something and glanced at the elder who was treating her wounds. "Elder, you brought Chu Yu here?" The elder didn't even raise his head as he replied, "Yes." Jiang Jiwan couldn't help but say, How can this be? Why not?" The elder took out some medicinal herbs and applied them to the wound on Jiang Jiwan's arm as he said with a smile. Chu Yu had already passed the examination before, but he had something to do at the last minute, so he couldn't make it. This time, we might as well bring him along. But Jiang Jiwan wanted to say something, but when she saw the smile on the elder's face, she suddenly realized something and swallowed the rest of her words. She quickly looked at the expressions of the other elders and found that they seemed to have a good attitude towards Chu Yu. She retracted her gaze, but endless doubts surged in her heart. What's going on? These elders obviously came after us, and they shouldn't have brought any other students. Why did they bring Chu Yu? Don't they feel that bringing such a person along is a burden? Jiang Jiwan had too many questions. However, she was used to observing people's expressions. At this moment, seeing that everyone's attitude towards Chu Luiyue was very good, she naturally knew what to say and what not to say. Shi Ru'er was beside her. She really thought that she was going to die, but who knew that she would be able to survive and meet Elder Hua Feng and the others? This time, she had to be with them no matter what. On the other side, Shi Ru'er and Elder Hua Feng had already walked to the side. Elder Hua Feng had even specially set up a barrier to prevent others from eavesdropping. His intuition told him that Shi Ru'er was going to say something. Sure enough, after the two of them stood still, Shi Ru'er went straight to the point. "Elder Hua Feng, are you really going to bring Jiang Jiwan along?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1339. Elder Hua Feng sighed. "I know you don't like her, but she's a student of the academy after all. Moreover, she's the only one among the 300 people who came to the northern region of the great desolate land. No matter how you look at it, we can't just abandon her here. Elder Hua Feng, I don't agree to bring her along because of personal reasons, but..." Shi Ru'er paused. "You said it yourself. There were more than 300 people from the academy before. Why is she the only one here? Not to mention the elders, even if it's the students, there should be many stronger than her, right? In my opinion, it's really suspicious for her to appear alone." Elder Hua Feng stroked his beard. "Your worries aren't unreasonable, but I'm afraid we don't have any other choice now, right? If there's really something wrong with her, do you think it's safer to let her go or to keep her in front of us? With so many of them here, it couldn't be that they couldn't even deal with Jiang Ji-won, right? Hearing this, Shi pondered for a moment and nodded. What you said makes sense. Then I'll listen to you. However, once I find out that there's a problem with her, I won't be merciful. Elder Hua Feng heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Good. You've always done things appropriately. The elders trust you. Shi also smiled. However, I don't quite understand why you don't like Jiang Ji-won so much. I remember that you returned to the meteor sect a few months after she came to the academy, right? There was basically no interaction between the two of them. He really didn't know where this estrangement came from. Shi tucked her hair behind her ear and smiled faintly. Actually, it's nothing. It's just that she did something that I don't like. But don't worry, as long as she's obedient along the way, I won't do anything to her. She would dirty her hands for nothing. Not to mention a mere Jiang Ji-won, she didn't even care about the entire immortal water mausoleum. Elder Hua Feng saw her honest expression and knew that she was telling the truth, so he was relieved. That's good, that's good. After the two finished chatting, they quickly went back. At this time, the injuries on Jiang Ji-won's body were basically treated. After taking a pill, her face finally regained some color. She stood obediently in the crowd, minimizing her presence. The group of people ran in the direction she had given them. Chu Yu, I heard that your contracted magical beast is a red-tailed phoenix? Shi seemed to like Chu Luiyue very much and was also very curious about her. After walking a distance, she started chatting with Chu Yu again. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded. Yes. Elder Hua Feng, who was walking in front, rubbed his nose. That's great. Let's spar when we have time. How about it? Shiru's eyes lit up. Ever since I contracted with this beast, I've never really fought with anyone. The fight between the legendary three-eyed eagle and the red-tailed red phoenix was naturally very interesting. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and said, Dumpling has always been lazy. Recently, she has been sleeping a lot and can't get up. This matter, why don't we talk about it later? Shi felt a little regretful, but this kind of thing couldn't be forced. All right. I just feel that it's quite lonely. I don't know why, but since 1,000 years ago, there hasn't been a legendary three-eyed eagle in the Divine Ruins world. It was an extremely coincidental thing that Father found this one. I don't know when I can find another one. Legendary three-eyed eagle? Jiang Ji-won, who was silent, couldn't help but say, there's a Yanyan Tower in the Yanyan Tower. There's one in Yuntianke. Senior sister Shiru, why don't you go there and have a match? Digression, that's all for the morning. I'll take a break. 6 p.m. It's so big. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1340. Shiru looked at her in surprise. Yuntian Tower? Jiang Ji-won's lips twitched, but there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. You don't know yet, right? The princess consort of the Yuntian Tower also has a legendary three-eyed eagle. Coincidentally, she also has a red-tailed phoenix. 2 contracted magical beasts? And both of them are mythical beasts? How is that possible? Shiru's first reaction was to shake her head. Magical beasts were proud and would never choose to serve the same master. Moreover, both of them were mythical beasts. I don't dare to lie in front of you. You can find out if it's true or not. Jiang Ji-won was furious at the mention of this matter. If not for the fact that there were 2 mythical beasts in Shangguanyu, how could she have lost the battle? Until now, she still did not know how Shangguanyu did it. Shiru was surprised to hear Jiang Ji-won's words. There was no need for Jiang Ji-won to lie about this matter. After all, she could just go to the Yuntian Tower and ask around to find out. So, it's true? If it's true, I'll have to go there when I have the chance in the future. Shiru thought for a while and suddenly laughed. You're indeed the one chosen by Rong Xiu to be the princess consort. You don't seem as bad as the rumors in the academy said, right? Jiang Ji-won, what do you think? Jiang Ji-won's face froze. She was obviously mocking her. This was because she was the one who spread the news about the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower. Of course, she would not say anything good about her. As the news spread, it became worse. Jiang Ji-won forced a smile. You're right, senior sister. I don't know what's going on in the academy these past few years, but there's been a trend of evil. Some people whose talent and strength are not as good as others don't think about how to work hard to surpass their opponents. Instead, they think of ways to slander their opponents. They even want to ruin their opponent's reputation and drag them down together. Shiru sneered. If I have the time, I'll really have to do something about it. Jiang Ji-won was speechless. Her face alternated between red and white. Chu Luiwei watched from the side and raised his eyebrows slightly. TSK. It was rare for her to see Jiang Ji-won being so humiliated in front of someone. Even when they were at the Yuntian Tower, she acted as if she was the owner of the place. However, when she was in front of Shiru, she behaved with her tail between her legs, as if she was afraid that Shiru would do something to her. If it weren't for the fact that this was not a good time, Chu Luiwei really wanted to ask her what was going on. By the way, Jiang Ji-won, you said that after you escaped, you were besieged again. Because of that, you and the others split up, right? Jiang Ji-won nodded nervously, as if she was still afraid of what happened before. Then why don't you tell us what happened at that time? Jiang Ji-won stammered. I was too nervous at that time and only cared about escaping. I don't know what happened, and I don't really remember. Then tell us in detail about your escape. Shiru emphasized the word escape with a faint smile. The more details you tell us, the more helpful it will be for us. Don't tell me, you're not even willing to do this? Jiang Ji-won felt guilty. Her mind was spinning quickly. This Shiru's eyes were very sharp. She had indeed been attacked twice, and she had indeed escaped during the chaos. However, the truth of the matter was very different from what she had described to Elder Huafeng and the others. She said it to She absolutely could not say it. Everything that happened at that time could not be known by them. Otherwise, senior sister, you've misunderstood. Why would I be unwilling? My mind is still a little confused. Let me think about it carefully. It's good to think about it more. Shiru chuckled. It's not too late to say it after you've sorted it out and thought about what to say. These words sounded awkward, but Jiang Ji-won couldn't find any words to refute, so she could only suppress her anger. She lowered her eyes, and her pale face looked haggard and pitiful. No one saw the resentment that flashed through her eyes. Shiru had been targeting her for more than a day or two. It wasn't that Jiang Ji-won didn't hate her. However, Shiru was the true second miss of the meteor sect. Moreover, she was the kind of person who had been groomed as the successor since she was young. Her status was noble, and her talent and strength were not inferior to hers. The disparity between the two sides was too great, so she could only endure it. Fortunately, she left a few months later. She didn't expect to meet her again after a few years. Yes, is right. You should recuperate your body and sort out your thoughts. Then, try your best to explain the matter clearly. This way, we might be able to find some clues and find Bo Yen and the others. Elder Huafeng also agreed with Shiru's words and added. Jiang Ji-won could only force a smile. Yes, Ziwon understands. After walking for a while, the sky was completely dark. The temperature at night was extremely cold. If they stayed in the same place, they would need to consume a large amount of force to maintain their body temperature. Moreover, if they were not careful, they might fall asleep forever. Therefore, everyone chose to continue walking. In the dark night sky, there was no moon, only a few stars twinkling. Everyone walked forward in silence. Suddenly, Taizu's voice sounded in Chu Luiwei's ears. Chu Luiwei was a little surprised. Taizu? What's wrong? Taizu paused for a moment and said, I feel that this place is very familiar. His voice was very soft, but in Chu Luiwei's ears, it was like a clap of thunder. She knew that if it wasn't for something, Taizu would never suddenly say such a thing. Do you remember something? Chu Luiwei asked softly in her heart. Not yet, but I should have been here before. In fact, he had this feeling since he first arrived at the northern region of the primordial world and came out of the teleportation formation. As they continued to move towards the hinterland, this feeling became stronger and stronger. So much so that he could finally say it out loud with certainty. Chu Luiwei was a little puzzled. Are you sure? The great ancestor gave a brief response. I think I know how to get here. Chu Luiwei suddenly stopped in her tracks. Chu Yu, what's wrong? Elder Hua Feng had been walking beside Chu Luiwei. Seeing that she had suddenly stopped, he couldn't help but turn his head and look at her curiously. Chu Luiwei came back to her senses and smiled. It's nothing. I just feel a little tired. Elder Hua Feng exhaled, and white mist drifted out of his mouth. This place was indeed too cold, and it was indeed too strenuous to walk. I think everyone is a little tired. Why don't we sit down and rest for an hour? This suggestion was agreed to by everyone. In fact, after running around for an entire day, they could not hold on any longer. Everyone cleared out an empty space in the snow, sat on the ground, and began to regulate their breathing. The only good thing about this place was that the origin power was quite dense. Chu Luiwei also sat down and closed her eyes. Taizu, please continue. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1341. This place shouldn't be like this in the past. Taizu's tone was a little uncertain. I know which direction is safer to go next, but I don't remember what's over there at all. Also, the range that I can sense at the moment is only about 10 miles around here. I'll probably only know about the places further away when I get there. Perhaps it's because too much time has passed, or perhaps my soul is still incomplete. In short, there's really not much that I can remember. Taizu hesitated for a moment before saying, You can listen to this for now. Don't take it completely seriously. What if I remember wrongly? Besides, even if I really came here, it was 1,000 years ago. The world has changed and everything is hard to say. Chu Luiwei said, Thank you for your guidance, Taizu. You understands. Then, where do you think we should go now? Taizu said a direction. Chu Luiwei slowly opened her eyes, and a hint of contemplation flashed through her eyes. What great ancestor said should still have a certain degree of truth. Since he had said so much, what's the harm in giving it a try? After all, even Elder Hua Feng and the others were helpless in this damned place. Half an hour passed quickly. The group stood up and prepared to leave. Elder Hua Feng looked at Jiang Jiwan. Where should we go next? Jiang Jiwan looked and pointed in a direction. It seems to be that way. The night was dark. Fortunately, the snow on the snowfield reflected a faint glow, and they could barely see the direction. Let's go. As soon as Elder Hua Feng gave the order, everyone started walking in that direction. Chu Luiwei suddenly said. Elder Hua Feng turned to look at her. Chu Yu, what's wrong? Chu Luiwei crossed her arms with one hand and held her chin with the other. After a moment of thought, she said, I don't think it's that direction. Let's go over there. As she spoke, she pointed in another direction. Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. What's going on? Only Jiang Jiwan's expression changed slightly after seeing this. Chu Yu, what are you talking about? Elder Hua Feng couldn't help but laugh. Could it be that you want to go that way? Chu Luiwei blinked. Yeah, I don't know why, but I feel that it might be safer there. Seeing that Chu Luiwei didn't seem to be joking, Elder Hua Feng's expression froze. But Jiang Jiwan said it was over there. Jiang Jiwan might not be right. Didn't she just say that she couldn't remember anything? Who knows if she'll remember in the opposite direction? Shiru suddenly spoke up and raised her chin at Chu Luiwei. Chu Yu, tell me, why do you want to change directions? Chu Luiwei paused. No reason. It's just my intuition. Shiru stared into her eyes for a while and then nodded. Okay, then we'll go in your direction. Jiang Jiwan suddenly raised her voice, and it was so sharp that it was a little ear-piercing. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, she realized that she had lost her composure and her voice became weak again. I remember it very clearly. It's over there. The northern part of the primordial world is filled with danger. If we go in the wrong direction, the consequences will be unimaginable. Senior Sister Jiang, I just said that we can go over there. Why are you so agitated? Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows. Jiang Juan's back was covered in cold sweat as she forced a smile. No, I'm just worried about everyone's safety. There are so many of us. If something happens, who will bear the responsibility? Hearing her say this, the other elders also deeply agreed. Chu Yu, Jiang Jiwan's words make sense. In this place, we really can't walk around casually. No matter what, she escaped alone. There shouldn't be a problem with the route. Let's go that way. That's right. Who knows what traps are hidden under this vast snowfield? It's better not to take risks, okay? Hearing this, Chu Luiwei wasn't angry. Instead, she smiled slightly. Of course, she could understand why they thought and said that. If it wasn't for Taizu, she wouldn't have jumped out and said that. However, it was useless to tell them. Chu Luiwei turned to look at Elder Hua Feng. Elder, do you believe me? Elder Hua Feng was stunned. Of course I believe you. Suddenly, he paused and narrowed his eyes. Chu Yu was so persistent. It was obvious that he didn't do it on a whim. Could it be that he knew something? He had the crimson gold heavenly phoenix by his side. Perhaps, this was actually the meaning of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix? Elder Hua Feng thought for a while and finally said, Then I'll listen to you this time. Let's walk over there and take a look. Elder Hua Feng? Jiang Jiwan looked at him in disbelief. You've really decided? This was a matter of everyone's lives. He actually believed Chu Yu's words so easily? Wasn't this too much of a joke? The other elders were also surprised. Elder Hua Feng chuckled and said, Let's take a look over there first. It's not a big deal. If something really happens, we'll just come back. Everyone fell silent for a moment. What are you saying? What if we don't have the time or ability to run back? Wouldn't we all be stuck inside then? However, although Elder Hua Feng seemed to be smiling amiably, those who knew him knew that he had already made a decision. Seeing that Elder Hua Feng and Shiru had agreed to follow Chu Luiwei, even if the rest of the people had objections, it was useless, so they simply agreed. The most anxious person was Jiang Jiwan. However, her reaction just now was too big, and it had already aroused the suspicion of Shiru and the others. If she forcefully objected, she was afraid that, helpless, she could only choose to tacitly agree and follow behind everyone. The group quickly headed in the direction Chu Luiwei pointed. The more they walked forward, the more anxious Jiang Jiwan became. She kept thinking about how to get everyone back. However, no one spoke much and nothing had happened, so she couldn't open her mouth. Thus, after walking for a while, a trace of white appeared on the horizon. Shiru couldn't help but laugh. Chu Yu, it seems that the direction you chose is indeed quite good, hula. Before he could finish his sentence, something suddenly rushed out from the snow in front of them, covering the sky and the earth as it headed straight for everyone. Digression. Update at 12 o'clock tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1342. Nine-tailed Blue Crow. The old man with white eyebrows standing beside Shiru immediately exclaimed, Retreat! When everyone heard this, they were all shocked and quickly retreated to the back. Nine-tailed blue crows were divine beasts. They were fierce and aggressive, and their attacks were extremely strong. Most importantly, they tended to live in groups. Once they were surrounded by nine-tailed blue crows, it would not be so easy to escape. Immediately after, the crowd saw a dense mass of people flying towards them at high speed. In just a moment, they had already rushed in front of them. Each of them was not big, and their bodies were dark grayish-green. Their black eyes were sharp and cold, and their white sharp beaks seemed to be able to bite off a piece of meat at any time. Behind them, there were 9 long and hard feathers. Usually, they were gathered together and drooped slightly, but when they were about to attack, those feathers would stand up and spread out. Under the sunlight, they reflected a clear ray of light. It was beautiful but also dangerous. In the vast expanse of white snow, Their appearance was really very eye-catching. Everyone retreated, but they were fast, but the nine-tailed blue crows were even faster. As their wings flapped, several nine-tailed blue crows had already swept past the snow and flew over quickly. Elder Huafeng and the others were originally standing at the front, so they were the first to bear the brunt. His expression turned stern as he quickly set up a barrier in front of him. Bang bang! Several nine-tailed blue crows slammed into the barrier. When Chu Luiwe heard this sound, he could not help but turn around to take a look, and a trace of shock flashed across his eyes. Those nine-tailed blue crows seemed to not care about their lives. They retreated a little, and then charged forward with even faster and more ferocious strength. Bang! Crack! A crack instantly appeared on Elder Huafeng's barrier. Bang! Another nine-tailed blue crow charged over with all its might. This time, the crack began to spread rapidly towards the surroundings. These nine-tailed blue crows were indeed fierce. They could clearly circle around and attack from other directions, but they did not. Instead, they stubbornly crashed into the barrier that blocked them. As divine beasts, their intelligence was already comparable to that of humans, or even higher. How could they not know that there were other ways to save energy? But they only chose to face the attack head-on. This was the ferocious temperament that was buried deep in the bones and blood. Of course, the most important thing was that they had the strength to fight head-on. The barrier shattered and Elder Huafeng's chest tightened. He also chose to turn around and leave quickly. Although the nine-tailed black crow's explosive power is strong, its endurance is not high. After 15 minutes, if they were unable to succeed, they would leave. Elder Huafeng hurriedly warned as he ran forward. Remember, do not take their lives. Walking on the snowy plains for a long time had consumed a lot of energy. Their speed began to slow down. The nine-tailed black crow behind quickly followed, and in a short while, it had already rushed in front of them. Jiang Jiwan, who was originally standing at the back, became the safest person when she fled. However, she didn't even have the time to rejoice when she heard a gust of wind sweep past her ears. After that, a nine-tailed azure crow flew before her eyes and blocked her path. The nine-tailed blue crow stared at her indifferently, as if she wanted to eat her alive. Jiang Jiwan's heart skipped a beat. The nine-tailed blue crow charged straight at her. Jiang Jiwan subconsciously took out a sword and slashed down fiercely. However, the nine-tailed blue crow was even faster and easily clamped the sword with its claws. Jiang Jiwan's heart sank. At this moment, the nine-tailed blue crow pulled out the long sword in her hand and threw it out. Jiang Jiwan immediately ran in another direction. However, she no longer had any strength, so how could she be a match for the nine-tailed blue crow? Plop! Jiang Jiwan fell to the ground, and most of her body sank into the thick snow. The sound of something tearing through the air came from behind. Jiang Jiwan turned around in fear. The nine-tailed blue crow was already approaching. It was about to tear her face apart. The others also saw this scene. However, because of the distance between them and Jiang Jiwan, in order to avoid the nine-tailed blue crow, she ran to the side in a panic. The distance between them was getting farther and farther. Shiru frowned. The next moment, a huge black figure appeared above her head. It was her contracted magical beast, a three-eyed eagle that had just reached adulthood. Go! Shiru ordered. The next moment, the three-eyed eagle's figure instantly disappeared before her eyes. At the same time, a sharp cry quickly spread. The cry that was filled with pressure stunned all the nine-tailed blue crows present. In comparison, the three-eyed eagle was more noble than the nine-tailed blue crow. The powerful bloodline power in its bones and blood caused these nine-tailed blue crows to feel a trace of reverence and hesitation, including the one in front of Jiang Jiwan. Hearing this sound, its movements hesitated for a moment. Seeing this scene, Jiang Jiwan was delighted and quickly attacked. She threw out something. It was an iron-colored metal tube that looked ordinary. Several lancet flying knives that were as thin as cicadas' wings suddenly flew out. These flying knives were extremely fast, and she chose the most important moment. The nine-tailed blue crow in front of her wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Countless flying knives pierced through its body. The unbelievably sharp weapons cut through feathers and flesh, making an extremely soft sound that made one's scalp tingle. Several streaks of bright red blood spurted out and flew onto Jiang Jiwan's face. Bang! The nine-tailed blue crow fell to the ground, and the white snow below quickly melted with blood, dyeing it red. As for its body, it was practically torn apart. In the blink of an eye, there was no sound. The surroundings suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at this scene with their mouths agape and their expressions shocked. Even those nine-tailed blue crows were all frozen in place. Only Jiang Jiwan was half lying in the snow, one hand on the ground, the other hand holding the iron-colored metal tube tightly. She gritted her teeth and panted heavily. Her chest rose and fell violently, and her eyes were wide open as she stared at the dead nine-tailed blue crow in front of her. A hint of joy flashed in her eyes. Her originally pale and haggard face was splashed with blood, and she looked inexplicably cold, causing people to feel fear in their hearts. After a while, as if sensing everyone's gaze, she slowly raised her head. Before she could announce her victory, she heard the white-browed elder's angry rebuke. "You're crazy!" Jiang Jiwan was stunned. This explosive shout was like a head-on blow that made her dizzy. She raised her eyebrows in disbelief. "It wants to kill me. If I don't fight back, am I supposed to sit here and wait for death?" As she spoke, she looked at Elder Hua Feng for help. "Elder, I know that senior sister Shiru doesn't like me. But no matter what, she can't ignore my life, right?" However, Elder Hua Feng's expression was also extremely ugly. "Didn't I just say that you can't hurt their lives?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1343. He spoke word by word, and his voice was extremely cold. Jiang Jiwan was at a loss. What was going on? Even Elder Hua Feng was standing on Shiru's side now? That's true. After all, she was the second young lady of the Meteor sect, the successor with a promising future. Compared to her, she was much better. Even if he was an elder of the academy, he was still a human. He would still flatter the strong and trample on the weak, right? Jiang Jiwan sneered in her heart and couldn't help but say, "Elder Hua Feng, do you mean that this nine-tailed blue crow is about to take my life, and I can't resist? I can only let it kill me?" "Stupid." The white-browed elder couldn't help but reprimand her. "Do you know that these nine-tailed blue crows live in a group? Once you kill one of them, the rest of the group will chase you to the end. They won't stop until they die." Jiang Jiwan's expression suddenly froze. "Why did we run away just now and not fight back? Do you think that you're the only one who has the ability to kill him? Now that you've killed this one, what should we do with the rest?" He had poked a huge hole in the ground. "As long as we can endure this 15 minutes, we can avoid this trouble. Now, how are we going to deal with the situation? Are you going to rely on that lousy hidden weapon of yours?" The white-browed elder was very angry, so his words were very rude. A trace of nervousness and fear finally appeared on Jiang Jiwan's face. But I have no choice. It wanted to kill me just now. I've already summoned the legendary three-eyed eagle. With its pressure, although it can't make these nine-tailed blue crows retreat, it will at least make them fear it." Shiru's expression was cold as he stared at Jiang Jiwan. His gaze was like a knife. "If I remember correctly, when the legendary three-eyed eagle came out, the nine-tailed blue crow in front of you had clearly stopped attacking. Instead, you took advantage of this opportunity to kill it. Shiru, are you brainless, or do you want to put all of us in danger?" Shiru really hated Jiang Jiwan to the extreme. This woman was unbelievably stupid. Clearly, everything had been explained clearly, and everyone else was fine. They just needed to wait for a while and they would be able to endure it. However, this Jiang Jiwan just had to appear and mess things up. Jiang Jiwan was speechless after being scolded. Her face was burning. Shiru's words were like slaps to her face in public, not leaving her any face. However, she had no reason to refute him. Helpless, she could only look at Elder Hua Feng and shed tears in panic. Elder, I didn't do it on purpose. I was too nervous and scared just now, that's why. I didn't know that senior sister was saving me just now. At that time, she already couldn't care about anything else, so why would she think so much? Besides, Shuru had always disliked her. It was still unknown whether her intention to save her was real or fake. If she had taken action earlier and summoned the legendary three-eyed eagle from the beginning, they wouldn't have fallen into such a situation. She wouldn't have been forced to attack the nine-tailed blue crow. Shuru was very smart and immediately guessed the meaning of Jiang Jiwon's words. She laughed sarcastically. What? From what you're saying, do you think I acted too late? Jiang Jiwon immediately said, Senior sister misunderstood. I definitely didn't mean that. Really? Whether it's true or not, you know in your heart. Shuru's lips curled up slightly, and her eyes were full of disdain. I don't like you, but I won't cause so much trouble for myself just to deal with you. She said this sentence lightly, but it was so high and mighty. Jiang Jiwon's heart seemed to be blocked by something, and her entire body felt uncomfortable. Tears kept falling, washing out 2 streaks of tears on her blood-stained face. Such a miserable appearance made it seem like she had suffered a great grievance. Hearing that Jiang Jiwon still had no intention of admitting her mistake, Elder Huafeng was extremely disappointed. It was clearly Jiang Jiwon who caused trouble for all of them, but now she was still acting like a victim. Who is this for? Or has already saved you, but not only do you not appreciate it, you even suspect her? Jiang Jiwon, you are too disappointing. Jiang Jiwon hurriedly explained, No. Elder. I didn't. A hoarse and ear-piercing screech suddenly sounded. Everyone looked over and saw the 9-tailed blue crows flying quickly towards Jiang Jiwon. Jiang Jiwon was extremely afraid and quickly retreated. The 9-tailed blue crows landed not far in front of her. With the dead one as the center, they formed a circle and flew around. A low, mournful hiss could be heard. Chu Liwei frowned slightly. Elder, we have to leave immediately. These 9-tailed blue crows were summoning their own kind. If they were a little later, I'm afraid. Let's go. Elder Huafeng made a prompt decision. Now, even if Shuru summoned the three-eyed eagle, it would be useless. The three-eyed eagle could deter them for a moment, but now that a 9-tailed blue crow had died, they would definitely not let this matter rest. Seeing that everyone was about to leave, Jiang Jiwon's heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly stood up. Elder. She had to go with them. She absolutely could not be left behind. How could she deal with these 9-tailed blue crows alone? The white-browed elder reprimanded coldly, The 9-tailed blue crows are very vengeful. I'm afraid this matter is not over yet. That one was killed by Jiang Jiwon. There's still blood on her body, so there's no way she can escape. If we continue to take her with us, I'm afraid even we won't be able to escape. He looked at Shuru. Oh, but second miss, there's no need for us to pay for this, right? The meaning behind his words could not be more obvious. They had to abandon Jiang Jiwon. Shuru pondered for a moment and looked at Elder Huafeng. Elder, what do you think? Elder Huafeng was very conflicted. On one hand, this matter was indeed caused by Jiang Jiwon herself, so she should bear the responsibility herself. But on the other hand, she was a student of the academy. If he abandoned her here, he still felt a little apologetic. You are all students of the academy. We can't abandon any of you at will, so how about this? You guys go first, and we'll stay behind. After we're done with the matters here, we'll meet up again when we have the chance. How about that? A trace of helplessness flashed across Shuru's eyes. Elder Huafeng's suggestion seemed to be fine, but wasn't this putting them in the most dangerous situation? And this was all because of Jiang Jiwon. Elder, it's impossible for us to leave alone. Since you've decided to take her with you, then let's just take her with us. If we have more people, we might be able to deal with it. As soon as he finished speaking, a hoarse cry suddenly came from afar. At the point where the heavens and the earth met, a large expanse of grayish-green surged towards them. Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1344. At a rough glance, there were at least 100 of them. Why are there so many nine-tailed black crows here? Elder Baimei shouted in shock. Then he immediately looked at Shiru. Second Miss, if there were only a few of them, they would still be able to deal with them. But now there were so many of them. One had to know that these were all divine beasts. They probably couldn't even deal with half of them. When Jiang Jiwon saw this scene, she was so frightened that she even forgot to cry. She hurriedly shouted at Elder Hua Feng in panic. "Elder, save me." It wasn't easy for her to survive. How could she die here? She almost rolled and crawled over, wishing that she could kneel on the ground and beg. Shiru looked at her with disgust. Shut up. She only knew how to cause trouble all day long and wanted the world to be in chaos. At the critical moment, she became the most cowardly one. This trouble was caused by Jiang Jiwon. Did they really have to pay with their lives? Was she worthy? Jiang Jiwon's body trembled when she heard this shout, but she didn't dare to say anything else. She only looked at Elder Hua Feng and the others in despair and desire. She could only rely on them now. Elder Hua Feng clenched his fists tightly. Now, even if they left Jiang Jiwon here, they might not be able to get rid of those nine-tailed black crows. Elder. Just when everyone was in a state of anxiety and panic, a clear and bright voice sounded. His voice was very clean, like a clear spring flowing down from the mountains, instantly breaking the stifling atmosphere. Chuyu? Elder Hua Feng looked at Chu Luiyue strangely. Chu Luiyue raised her chin. If you trust me, then come with me. Her tone was very calm, but it made Elder Hua Feng's heart suddenly calm. He didn't know why, but although it was only a short sentence, his anxious and uneasy emotions seemed to have been soothed in an instant. Looking at those dark and clear eyes, many thoughts flashed through his mind. In the end, he only nodded firmly. All right. Chu Luiyue's lips curved into a faint smile. Although Elder Hua Feng was somewhat indecisive, he trusted her very much. Just this point alone was enough. Chu Luiyue stepped forward. Elder Hua Feng followed closely behind. Everyone keep up. Hearing this order, the other elders in the academy looked at each other, but thinking of what had happened on the way here, they quickly followed. Without mentioning anything else, Chuyu was indeed a lucky star. If she followed him, she might really be able to avoid this disaster. Shiru frowned and was about to follow them when the white-browed old man stopped her. His aged face was filled with disapproval. Second Miss, this is a serious matter. You have to think twice. In the beginning, Second Miss said that she wanted to work with the people from Lingxiao College, and he agreed. After that, Second Miss agreed to follow Chu Yu's direction, and he also agreed. But now, the people from Lingxiao College had created such a big mess, and they had to clean it up. Their relationship was good, but it wasn't to this extent. The sect leader had sent them here to find the heavenly square cauldron. What was this now? If there was one, there would be two, but not three. They had to separate from Lingxiao College to survive. Sixth uncle, I know what you're worried about. But I have to go with them. Scherer said softly but firmly. The white-browed old man hesitated. But, even if we split up now, it's too late. When the nine-tailed black crow died just now, we were all present. Their auras are mixed up, and the remaining ones won't let us go easily. As Shiru spoke, she revealed a faint smile. Moreover, I believe in the academy elders, and I also believe in Chuyu. Seeing her determined attitude, the white-browed old man could only nod helplessly. Then, we'll listen to you. If we're really forced into a desperate situation, then we can only. Shiru turned around and followed. Everyone from the meteor sect hurriedly followed. At this moment, Jiang Jun suddenly rushed to Elder Hua Feng's side and said anxiously, Elder, do you really plan to trust Chu Yu's so-called intuition so much? Elder Hua Feng stopped in his tracks. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly and glanced at her with a faint smile. Just now, we followed the direction she chose and encountered these nine-tailed black crows. It's a matter of life and death. If we continue to follow her, Senior Sister Jiang, Chu Luiyue said lazily, if you didn't kill that nine-tailed black crow, we would have already escaped from danger. Why would we still be chased by so many nine-tailed black crows? Jiang Jiwon choked. Besides, if you think it's dangerous to follow us, then we won't force you. Why don't you just go wherever you think is the safest? Chu Liuyue's simple words made Jiang Jiwon speechless. She gritted her teeth and lowered her head in the end. Right now, she really didn't have any qualifications to continue bargaining with these people. Forget it. As long as she kept her life, she could talk about the rest later. Chu Liyue retracted her gaze and sneered in her heart. Jiang Jiwon seemed to have not understood the situation until now. Everyone present now harbored resentment towards her. Even Elder Hua Feng probably no longer had the pity and sympathy he had for her at the beginning. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to find the whereabouts of Elder Bo Yen and the others through Jiang Jiwon, he wouldn't have allowed Jiang Jiwon to jump around. The sound of wings flapping came from the sky. It was the nine-tailed black crows rapidly approaching. Chu Liyue didn't even turn her head. It was as if she didn't put those nine-tailed black crows in her eyes as she walked forward step by step. Taizu, where should we go next? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1345. Chu Liyue walked forward in the direction indicated by Taizu. Her speed was not considered fast. In fact, at this time, everyone had basically consumed a lot of strength, so they could not be much faster. The nine-tailed green crow would catch up to them sooner or later. Hearing the sound of wings flapping closer and closer, Elder Hua Feng could not help but glance sideways at Chu Liyue, only to see that her expression was calm beyond his expectations. Such a calm temperament did not seem like a 16 or 17-year-old youth at all. It was not that he was not curious, but because he knew about the existence of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, he subconsciously chose to believe in Chu Liyue. Everyone walked forward in silence. Swoosh! A terrifying aura suddenly attacked from behind. Jiang Jiwon was shocked and immediately dodged to the side. A green flame streaked past her body at a high speed. Her sleeves instantly burst into flames. Ah! Jiang Jiwon cried out in pain and quickly extinguished the flame. The flames were quickly extinguished, but more than half of her sleeves were burnt. Moreover, there was a large, charred and twisted scar on her arm from the flames. Intense pain quickly spread through his body. Jiang Jiwon's lips turned pale. In a world of ice and snow, the cold wind was bone-chilling. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She turned around in a panic and saw that the nine-tailed green crow flying at the front had attacked her. Their target was indeed her. This time, Jiang Jiwon did not care about the pain and began to run forward at full speed. As she ran, she frantically thought of a way to survive. A few people in front turned around and saw this scene, but they did not make a move. At this time, they still had to save some strength to escape. How could they have the strength to help others? Not to mention that this other person was the culprit who had brought them this big trouble. Jiang Ziyuan was being tortured to the point that she couldn't even speak as she ran away pathetically. However, Chu Liyue, who was in front, didn't even look at her. The further they went, the clearer Taizu's memories seemed to be. From Chu Liyue's point of view, this was clearly an endless snowfield. However, Taizu seemed to know every blade of grass and tree here. At this time, Chu Liyue was extremely sure that Taizu had indeed been here. Taizu, could your other remaining souls be here? Chu Liyue could not help but ask. Taizu was silent for a moment and sighed softly. Perhaps, in fact, he did feel that something was summoning him. This feeling was very familiar, and as time passed, it became stronger. At this moment, the nine-tailed green crows had all caught up. Some of them directly in front of Chu Liyue and the others. Several green flames flew green crows, a barrier. The temperature of the flame was not only it was Lin's, it was Liyue's. It burned crazily on the snow, but the snow did not show any signs of melting. Chu Liyue's eyes turned cold. Chu Yu, step back, I'll. Before Elder Hua Feng could finish his sentence, he saw Chu Liyue step over. The green flames seemed to have encountered something terrifying and quickly retreated. Everything happened in an instant. If it weren't for Elder Huafeng standing beside Chu Luiyue and staring at her closely, he probably wouldn't have seen this scene. He was stunned for a moment before he immediately understood something. He raised his hand and waved out a wave of force. The flames began to extinguish. Everyone followed one after another. Shiru saw all of this and was about to follow up to ask when she saw Chu Luiyue suddenly stop in her tracks. Elder Huafeng also stopped. How? Just as she opened her mouth, her voice stopped abruptly. Because she also saw the scene in front of her. Right in front of them was actually a canyon. It was as if the ground was suddenly split open by a huge axe. The narrow and endless canyon continued to spread. They could not see where the canyon began or where it ended. They only knew that at this moment, there was a natural moat across this land that stopped them. On both sides were black rocks, as if they had been exposed to wind and rain for thousands of years. It was thick, simple, and vast. On the ground below, red sand was piled up. When the wind blew, the thin layer of sand on the surface would rise with the wind. The rough sand was hot and dry. No one knew where this path led to. But why is there such a canyon here? Shiru muttered in shock. Looking around, it was a world of ice and snow. It was as if no matter which direction they walked, they would never reach the end. However, in such a world, there was actually such a special scenery. All the wind and snow seemed to have automatically avoided this place. The air below was dry and warm. It was like another world. At this moment, everyone behind also walked over. After seeing everything in front of them, everyone fell silent. How should they choose? At this moment, the group of nine-tailed blue crows had already forced their way behind them. However, they seemed to be afraid of something. They only lingered in place, unwilling to take another step forward. They don't seem to dare to approach this canyon. A low voice came from the crowd. But we're in a desperate situation now. Even these nine-tailed blue crows are so energetic. Who knows what's hidden in the canyon below? But we don't have any other choice now. With so many nine-tailed blue crows, we're no match for them at all. Obviously, many people were filled with anxiety about this canyon that had suddenly appeared. At this moment, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and jumped. Chuyu! Elder Huafeng exclaimed in shock. After hesitating for a moment, he immediately flew down. They had already followed them to this point, so they could only continue forward. Even if there was any danger down there, was it safe now? Seeing that Elder Huafeng and Chu Luiyue had both gone down, Shiru frowned slightly and immediately flew down as well. This way, everyone chose to follow. From afar, one figure after another quickly disappeared from the snowy plains. The nine-tailed blue crows let out angry cries, but they still didn't dare to take a step closer. After circling in the air for a long time, they finally left. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1346. Chu Luiyue headed towards the bottom of the canyon. The closer she got, the more she could feel the hot aura. Unlike the bone-chilling snowfield above, the temperature here was much higher. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was as warm as spring. When Chu Luiyue's feet finally stepped on the red sand, she even vaguely felt that it was a little hot. She lowered her eyes and took a look. The sand that was blown on her face by the wind was hot. Fortunately, the grains of the sand were larger and rougher. Walking on it was not like walking in the desert, where she had to sink with every step. Just this point alone was already much better than trudging through the thick snow outside. She glanced at both sides. The red sand was covered in endless sand. Elder Huafeng landed beside Chu Luiyue and followed her line of sight. He couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that there was such a canyon below. Furthermore, this canyon appeared to be very strange. He wanted to ask Chu Luiyue where this was, but halfway through he remembered that she probably did not know either. However, no matter what, this place seemed to be much safer than outside. At the very least, they had avoided the nine-tailed black crow. Chuyu, you're really good. How did you find such a place? Shiru walked towards Chu Luiyue with a surprised smile on her face. Chu Luiyue smiled. Senior sister, you flatter me. It was just a coincidence. I didn't know that this place would look like this. Shiru's brows twitched slightly, but she did not fully believe his words. If she really didn't know, why would she come here without any resistance? Looking at Chu Yu's expression just now, he did seem to be full of surprise. It didn't seem like he was faking it. She suppressed this thought. No matter what, Chu Yu had helped them solve a problem. I owe you a favor. Shiru smiled. If it wasn't for you, we don't know what would have happened today. Chu Luiyue thought about it and did not refuse. Shiru was interested in befriending her, and it just so happened that she also admired Shiru. It was not bad to have more friends. Moreover, the other party was such an important figure. At this moment, a low cry of pain was heard. It turned out that Jiang Jiwan had fallen down from the stone wall. Her head and face were covered in blood, and she looked battered and exhausted. Originally, she had also flown down like everyone else, but in the end, her physical strength was not enough. Coupled with the many injuries on her body, she did not control herself well and ended up like this. An elder of the academy shook his head and sighed. He walked over and handed her a jade bottle. He was the one who had helped Jiang Jiwan bandage her wound. Without a doubt, there were pills inside. But this time, the elder left after giving her the medicine. He didn't seem to have any intention of helping her deal with the new wounds. Although everyone was out of danger now, they still couldn't let go of Jiang Jiwan's wrongdoings immediately. How could she let go of a matter of life and death so easily? Jiang Jiwan knew that she was in the wrong, so she didn't dare to say anything. She just silently hid at the side. Left, right, 2 roads? Which way should we go? Elder Huafeng asked. After experiencing these things, he had begun to unconsciously seek Chu Luiyue's opinion. Chu Luiyue crossed her arms and fell into deep thought. After a moment, she pointed to the right. Over there. Digression. A crippled February floated past. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1347. This place used to be a river. Taizu's voice sounded in a low voice. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered as she walked forward with a calm expression. It seemed that when Taizu came here 1,000 years ago, this place was still different. It was just that the sea had turned into mulberry fields, and everything had changed. This sand contains abundant energy, but it's too mottled and not easy to absorb. Taizu said regretfully. Otherwise, you can continue cultivating here. Chu Luiyue smiled in her heart. Taizu, I'm not in a hurry, so why are you in a hurry? It's not that I'm in a hurry, but this is the only way to live up to your current talent. Taizu sighed softly. You've already broken through to the Xian King Master Realm, and if I'm not wrong, you should be able to break through the shackles and reach the realm of a doctor soon. Only this martial artist. Logically speaking, you've already devoured so much heaven and earth origin energy. Even if you don't break through to the God realm, you should at least be a rank 9 martial artist. But no. Without a doubt, Chu Luiyue had astonishing talent in all 3 aspects of cultivation. Any one of them could definitely be considered top-notch. Chu Luiyue's cultivation as a Xian master and celestial physician had always been very smooth, but as a martial artist, the speed of her breakthrough was so slow that it made one's hair stand on end. At this point, she was only a rank 8 martial artist. Others might not know, but he knew it the best. Chu Luiyue had already recovered her Tianjing Yuan Meridian, and when she broke through to the rank 7 martial artist and passed the God Ascension Tribulation, the scene was also extraordinary, something he had never seen before in his life. With such talent, it was really strange that she could barely break through to the rank 8 martial artist. A faint smile flashed across Chu Luiyue's lips. She was already used to this. After her rebirth, from the moment she obtained this water droplet, she realized that her cultivation as a martial artist seemed to have been deliberately suppressed by this thing. Although I'm a rank 8 martial artist, but I might be able to fight against a rank 9 martial artist. Chu Luiyue teased in his heart. However, this time, the Taizu had a different opinion. In the end, it's different. I know that your strength is tyrannical, But the difference between levels doesn't seem that obvious to you. But that was only for now. The gap between a rank 8 and a rank 9 martial artist may be bridged with your various means now, but if you go further up, the gap between the ranks will become bigger and bigger. When that time comes, it won't be so easy for you to challenge someone of a higher rank like you are doing now. For example, if you are a rank 9 warrior and the other party is a demigod, what would you do? If it was a high god, he could easily crush you with his divine domain. These questions? Have you thought about them? Currently, Chu Luiyue could rely on that streak of divine power to barely exchange a blow with a demigod expert. Coupled with the Scarlet Heaven Sword, it was possible that they could fight to a draw. However, those were ultimately external forces. Only when one's own strength was strong could one be considered a true expert. Chu Luiyue lowered his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes, pondering for a moment. Taizu's lesson is right. In fact, she had always been curious about this matter. Because from the situation of the Azure Sky role, she had broken through to the divine domain before, but she had always been missing this memory, so there was no way to investigate. I wonder, when she broke through to the divine domain now, what kind of scene would it be? Time seemed to pass exceptionally slowly. Everyone walked forward in silence, but they didn't know when the end would be. This feeling of not seeing hope was the most torturous. And the further they walked, the hotter the surroundings seemed to be. Don't you feel that something is wrong here? Finally, an elder of the academy couldn't help but speak, wiping the sweat on his forehead. I feel it too. The temperature here is indeed abnormal. The other elder nodded. With their strength, even if they walked for a while under the scorching summer sun, they wouldn't be as hot as they were now. This feeling seemed to be. It seemed to be starting from inside their bodies. Look, the surrounding scenery seems to have changed as well. Chu Luiyue recovered her senses, instinctively looked up, and scanned her surroundings. With this look, she indeed saw something wrong. On the rocks on both sides of the canyon, there were ravines and cracks. It seemed to have some kind of pattern, or it seemed to have been distorted by some special force. In short, it looked a little strange. Chu Luiyue couldn't explain where this feeling came from, but her heart felt inexplicably suppressed by something. Suddenly, her gaze focused, and she took a few steps forward, walking to the right. Chuyu, what's wrong? Elder Hua Feng walked over with a puzzled expression. Chu Luiyue stood a step away from the mountain rock. Looking up from here, it was a steep cliff that was almost 90 degrees. One could even see a pile of pure white snow on top of it. What are you looking at? Elder Hua Feng followed her gaze, but he didn't find anything wrong. Chu Luiyue took a step forward and swept away a piece of red sand under her feet. Half of a white bone suddenly appeared. Elder Hua Feng was stunned. It seemed to be a bone that had been buried here for a long time. Because only a little was exposed, it was impossible to guess its shape, let alone its identity. But the key was that this white bone was lustrous and faintly emitting light. Upon closer inspection, one could see the light slowly flowing inside. This was definitely not an ordinary bone. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and grabbed the bone, wanting to take it out. However, the lower part of it was buried in the hard mountain rocks. Chu Luiyue tried several times, but she didn't succeed. In the end, Chu Luiyue could only give up. This should have all been buried here. Chu Luiyue said softly, then leaned over and grabbed a handful of sand. This sand should have evolved from these mountain rocks. That was why half of the white bone was exposed. It was just that she didn't know what kind of skeleton this was. It was actually buried in this thick and hard mountain rock. This isn't a human bone. The legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly said. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Not a human bone? Then this is the bone of a dragon. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1348. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. A dragon's bone? That's right. And from the looks of it, the owner of this skeleton had quite a high status in the dragon race when he was alive. It's very likely that it's the skeleton of an azure dragon or a black dragon. Perhaps it was because it had fused with the two skeletons of the dragon race, But the current three-eyed eagle was extremely sensitive to this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to identify the other party with just half a bone. Chu Luiyue frowned in confusion. There shouldn't be only one bone buried here. It was very likely that a dragon had fallen here. Chuyu? Chuyu? Elder Hua Feng called out to her twice before Chu Luiyue came back to her senses. Did you think of something? Elder Hua Feng carefully sized up her expression. Chu Luiyue shook her head regretfully, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. No, I just feel that it's a little strange for such a bone to appear here. Maybe there were cultivators who died here in the past. An elder behind her guessed. Looking at this skeleton, it's at least a demigod expert. However, this wasn't that strange. This was the northern region of the Great Desolate Land, and countless experts had died here. What was a piece of bone? Chu Luiyue nodded. Maybe. The group of people continued to move forward. The matter of that bone didn't attract anyone's attention. However, after walking for a while, Chu Luiyue found a few more similar bones. Most of them were buried underground, and with the cover of the red sand, it was almost impossible to notice them if one didn't look carefully. Could these bones be related to the Heavenly Square sacred cauldron? An elder couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Everyone fell silent for a moment and looked at each other. In fact, they all had the same suspicion in their hearts, but they didn't mention it before. It was fine if they occasionally saw one or two bones, but along the way, they seemed to appear every once in a while. Moreover, these bones were the same as the first one. They were lustrous and looked like white jade at first glance. Bang! At this moment, a shocking sound suddenly came from in front of everyone. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened as he quickly looked up. He saw a mountain rock in front of him suddenly crumble and fall rapidly. He crashed heavily onto the ground. In an instant, the ground shook and sand and pebbles were sent flying. The originally spacious canyon became crowded due to the appearance of this huge rock, almost blocking their path. Then, several figures came out from behind the rock. Chu Luiyue took a closer look. There were about 10 of them, and one of the men was being besieged. 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. The man was defeated bit by bit. However, the people besieging him were all trying to kill him. It didn't take long for the man to fall to the ground. Die. The man who was about to be beheaded struggled to get up, wanting to escape. However, one of his legs was already broken, and he was on the verge of death. How could he run? Seeing that a long sword was about to pierce through his head, he suddenly looked up and saw Chu Luiyue and the rest. He used almost all of his strength to pull himself up. Help! I beg you, please save me. He struggled to crawl over. His face was covered in blood and he looked panicked. I am the 3rd young master of the Liang family, Liang Shaokong. As long as you save me, my Liang family will definitely repay you in the future. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. Liang family? That sounds familiar. Sure Ru immediately recognized his identity. That's Liang Xiaoxiao's brother. Chu Luiyue instantly understood. Liang Shaokong, Liang Xiaoxiao, no wonder she felt that she had heard of them before. Wasn't there only one Liang family in the entire Divine Ruins world? The group of people who originally wanted to kill Liang Shaokong to silence him immediately had ugly expressions on their faces when they heard him say his identity. The person in front looked directly at Elder Hua Feng and the others. Originally, he wanted to curse them, but when he saw Elder Hua Feng and the others, he immediately realized that these people were very strong. They didn't seem to be easy to provoke. He forcefully swallowed the remaining half of his words, and his eyes swept over the crowd in shock and bewilderment. The people behind him had already taken advantage of this short period of time to detain Liang Shaokong. Whether he lived or died, it was just a matter of a sentence. May I ask, where are you from? Elder Hua Feng took a step forward. I am Hua Feng of Lingxiao College. As soon as he finished speaking, the expressions of the people on the other side changed. The man standing in front immediately cupped his fists politely. So it's Elder Hua Feng. Sorry for the disrespect. We are from the Su family of Lingyun Mountain. The Su family of Lingyun Mountain had never been on good terms with the Liang family, so it was normal for them to fight. However, Liang Shaokong was a direct descendant of the Liang family, so it was strange that they were so ruthless. Elder Huafeng, you must save me, even if it's for my sister's sake. His sister was naturally Liang Xiaoxiao. I have been chased by these people for a day and a night. They are determined to kill me, Elder. Please help me. The Liang family will definitely be grateful. At this moment, Liang Shaokong was like a drowning person desperately trying to grab onto the last straw. Elder Huafeng, this matter is a personal grudge between us and Liang Shaokong. Please don't interfere. The leader of the men from Lingyun Mountain said in a deep voice. They didn't have much contact with Lingxiao College, so their relationship was naturally not as good as Liang Shaokong's. If Lingxiao College was determined to help Liang Shaokong, then they might not be able to do anything to Liang Shaokong today. Elder Huafeng couldn't help but ask, "What's going on?" You have to ask Liang Shaokong about this. If he didn't scheme to frame us first, why would we chase after him like this? He lied to us and lured us here. Then he waited for an opportunity to murder us. He has already killed more than 20 people from Lingyun Mountain. How can we not take revenge for such a blood feud? Hearing this, everyone present was shocked. If this was true, then it was understandable that they insisted on killing Liang Shaokong. It's not like that. Elder Huafeng, don't listen to his one-sided words. In fact, I was also deceived. Liang Shaokong swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. Previously, we found traces of the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron. When we were about to go and investigate, we met the people from Lingyun Mountain. They originally wanted to find trouble with us, but the geese didn't want to waste time on this matter, so we simply told them the news. Moreover, we discussed that whether we could obtain the heavenly square cauldron would depend on our own abilities. After everything is over, we will resolve the grudge between us. At this point, Liang Shaokong's body trembled, as if he had thought of something terrible. We searched all the way, but who knew that it had nothing to do with the heavenly square cauldron and roar? A deep and ancient dragon roar came from afar. Digression, I went out early in the morning and planned to write on the train. In the end, my computer ran out of battery and I couldn't charge it. I couldn't upload the 1,000 words I wrote, so I could only try to write on my phone. I can't confirm the time and amount of updates for today's update. I'll try my best to write on my phone on the train. But because I haven't tried it before, it's very likely that I won't be able to write much. I'll make up for what I owe in the next few days. Thank you for your understanding. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1349. The dragon's roar spread throughout the canyon. It was as if it had been covered in 1,000 years of wind and frost. It was filled with the aura of iron and blood, causing one's heart to tremble. Chu Luiwei only felt a buzzing in her ears. A heavy pressure crushed down and instantly reached the depths of her heart. It was almost suffocating. She quickly raised her eyes and looked forward. In the long and narrow canyon, there were cliffs on both sides. In the middle, there was only red sand rising with the wind. It was a vast expanse. Could it be that a dragon is here? Everyone was shocked. However, the expressions of Liang Shaokong and the people from Spirit Charm Mountain were a little strange. It was as if they were shocked, but there was also a hint of fear in their eyes. That's not a real dragon. Liang Shaokong opened his mouth. His voice was hoarse and his throat was tight. Not a dragon? But this dragon's roar and the pressure contained within it can't be faked. Elder Huafeng, that's the place Liang Shaokong tricked us into going. The man in the lead of Spirit Charm Mountain sneered. It's extremely dangerous there. We advise you not to take this risk. Seeing that he didn't seem to be faking it, Elder Huafeng and the others exchanged glances. This commotion was definitely not ordinary. Perhaps there really was some secret hidden there. But from the reaction of Liang Shaokong and the others, it was indeed very dangerous. What do you think? Sure pondered for a moment, but there was a trace of hesitation in her heart. Of course she wanted to go. After all, they didn't come here from afar for fun. But Spirit Charm Mountain and the Liang family had suffered heavy casualties. Chu, what do you think? The rest of the people also looked at Chu Luiyue. After these things, they seemed to have unconsciously treated Chu Luiyue as their backbone. When they encountered something that they couldn't decide, they would ask for her opinion. Chu Luiyue nodded. Go. Elder Huafeng, you can't go. Liang Shaokong couldn't care less at this moment. He shouted anxiously as he struggled to stand up. Kneel. The men next to him shouted angrily and pressed Liang Shaokong down with their swords. Feeling the cold touch on his neck and the blood slowly oozing out, Liang Shaokong was so scared that his face turned pale and he quickly knelt down. Even though it was humiliating, his life was more important in this situation. That side is indeed very dangerous. Elder Huafeng, why must you do this? Previously, I didn't know. That's why so many people from my Liang clan were implicated. However, since I've already suffered a loss, how can I just watch as you guys go over? Liang Shaokong really didn't want them to go over. It wasn't easy for him to escape from there. How could he follow this group of people back? The leader of the Lingyun Mountain frowned as well, his face filled with disapproval. However, this had nothing to do with them as long as the other party promised not to interfere with Liang Shaokong's affairs. If that's the case, then we'll take our leave first. As he spoke, he waved his hand and was about to leave with Liang Shaokong. Elder Huafeng nodded. Liang Shaokong's eyes suddenly widened. Elder Huafeng and the others weren't planning to stand up for him? What he didn't know was that Elder Huafeng was already in a lot of trouble. They hadn't even found the elders and students of their own academy. They had just escaped from the nine-tailed black crow's siege. How could they have the extra energy to care about others? Liang Shaokong was Liang Xiaoxiao's brother, but none of them were Liang Xiaoxiao's master. As for the Liang clan, could it be that the Lingyun Mountain was easy to deal with? Not to mention that there was indeed a grudge between them that had dozens of lives. At this time, the best choice was to not interfere and ignore them. I know the safest way to go over. Elder Huafeng, if you can help me once, I can go back with you. Every moment counts. He was sure that after these people left, the people of the Lingyun Mountain would immediately kill him. Elder Huafeng hesitated for a moment. If Liang Shaokong could bring him along, it might be much more convenient. However, he really didn't want to get involved in this mess between them. No need. Chu Luiyue laughed. Elder, if you're worried, I'll lead the way. Seeing that she seemed very confident, Elder Huafeng couldn't help but feel much more at ease. All right. In any case, Chu Yu had always been in charge of this journey. Although the journey was dangerous, he was still safe and sound. Therefore, he trusted him very much now. There's no time to lose. Let's go. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she walked forward. Everyone quickly followed. Liang Shaokong was dumbfounded. What was going on? There were so many people, but they actually listened to a brat? That Chu Yu, could it be that he was some powerful figure? But he had never heard of him before. Wasn't this courting death? Even the people of the Lingyun Mountain were shocked when they saw this scene. Could it be that this youth was the one who had the final say in this group of people? But other than looking delicate and clean, there was nothing particularly outstanding about her. Another dragon's roar sounded. This time, the sound was clearer and louder than before. The pressure was naturally stronger. A trace of hesitation flashed in the eyes of the leader of the Lingyun Mountain. In fact, when they went over just now, other than being attacked and killing more than half of them, they didn't see what was going on at all. After thinking for a moment, he walked in front of Liang Shaokong. Swoosh! A long sword was pointed at Liang Shaokong's forehead. As long as it moved an inch forward, it would be completely finished off. Liang Shaokong widened his eyes in horror, and a trace of despair surged in his heart. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. Ziyuan. Jiang Jiwan's body stiffened, and then she continued to walk forward as if she didn't hear anything. Seeing her reaction, Liang Shaokong, who was still a little suspicious, immediately confirmed her identity. Xing, it's really you? He looked at the woman who walked past him in disbelief. Her clothes were messy, and her body was covered in blood. Her left sleeve seemed to have been burned by something, and there was a large twisted burn on her arm. Her aura was weak, and her face was haggard. She was completely different from the smiling woman in his memory. However, Liang Shaokong didn't have time to ask anything else. Xion, please help me. Because of Liang Xiaoxiao, they were familiar with each other. Moreover, Liang Shaokong had always been interested in her and tried to please her. It was a pity that Jiang Jiwan had always kept him at arm's length. She should be the one that Liang Shaokong was most familiar with among these people. Hearing Liang Shaokong call out her name, Jiang Jiwan was annoyed, but she had to pull herself together and said hesitantly, "Third young Master Liang, it's not that Ziyuan doesn't want to help you, but, as you can see, I can't say anything. Everyone listens to Chu Yu." Liang Shaokong blurted out, "Then help me beg him." Digression. Human potential is really endless. I've been writing for 5 years, but I haven't been able to use my phone to write. Until today, I'll have a meal and check my phone in the afternoon. If there's still battery, I'll continue to write. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 1350. Jiang Jiwan looked at Liang Shaokong in disbelief. What did he say? He wanted her to help beg Chu Yu? Dream on. It was already hard enough for her to lower herself for his sake, let alone Liang Shaokong, who had nothing to do with her. She didn't get along with Chu Yu, and there was also a barrier between her and Shi Rui. The only people she could plead for were Elder Hua Feng and the others. But that was also because she was a student of the academy. The attitude of the few elders was very clear just now. They had no intention of helping at all. At this time, if she jumped out to speak up for Liang Shaokong, wouldn't she be looking for trouble? Third young Master Liang, I'm really sorry. I'm just an ordinary student of the academy. As for your matters, I really can't do anything. With that, Jiang Jiwan lifted her feet and was about to leave. Liang Shaokong was anxious. Wait, you can't abandon me like this. If anything happens to me, Xiao Xiao will definitely not forgive you in the future. Jiang Jiwan sneered. Liang Xiaoxiao? Even if the person who was about to be killed was Liang Xiaoxiao herself, she wouldn't take a second look, let alone Liang Shaokong? She walked forward without looking back. Liang Shaokong's eyes were about to split open. Jiang Jiwan. To think that Xiao Xiao and I have always been so good to you. I didn't expect that in the end, we raised an ingrate. Just you wait. You? Liang Shaokong didn't finish his sentence. Bang. His body stiffened and he fell straight to the ground. Bright red blood gushed out from his neck and quickly dyed it red. Then, it was quickly swallowed up by the red sand. His eyeballs popped out as he stared at Jiang Jiwan's back. Jiang Zun faintly felt a chill coming from behind her, and a layer of goosebumps appeared on her back. However, she didn't turn back in the end. She only walked forward quickly and caught up with the others. The man leading the Ling Yun Mountain team looked meaningfully at the figure in the distance. Then, he retracted his gaze and coldly glanced at the dead Liang Shaokong. Clean it up. Chu Luiyue and his group continued to move forward after passing the boulder in the middle. The further they went, the deeper the ravines on both sides of the cliff. The lines crisscrossed, and the texture of the skin was distinct. The temperature was also much higher than before. Chu Luiyue's heart unconsciously gave birth to a trace of irritation. The blood in his body surged, as if it was about to rush out directly. Taizu's voice was particularly deep and powerful, like a basin of ice water pouring down on Chu Luiyue's head, immediately calming him down a lot. The origin power here is modeled and complicated. Too much of it will disturb one's mental state. Be careful. Chu Luiyue rubbed his temples, a trace of lingering fear in his heart. Thank you for your reminder, Taizu. With these mixed energies gathered together, even if one didn't purposely devour them, it was inevitable that one would be affected while walking among them. She was really careless. Elder, remind everyone to set up a barrier. There's something wrong with the origin power here. As Chu Luiyue spoke, a brilliant golden color quickly appeared on his body and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Elder Hua Feng responded with a solemn expression and turned around to instruct everyone seriously. He had also noticed that something was wrong just now, but he wasn't sure. A large part of this power seems to be emitted from the red sand. I don't know what's going on, Elder Hua Feng muttered in a low voice. Chu Liyue's eyes drooped slightly, but the dragon bones buried deep underground flashed in his mind. Perhaps, what is that? Shiru suddenly exclaimed. Chu Liyue put away his thoughts and looked up. In front of him, a cliff blocked the path. It seemed to be the end of the canyon. On the mountain rock, there was a door. Magnificent. Solemn. The door was completely red, like a red-hot soldering iron. Terrifying heat emanated from it, setting off rolling heat waves. The surrounding space seemed to be slightly distorted. It was terrifying. On the ground not far from the door, dozens of corpses were scattered everywhere. Most of them were already damaged and incomplete, and they looked terrifying. Chu Liyue immediately understood that these should be the people from the Spirit Charm Mountain and the Liang family who had died here previously. It seemed that they were almost wiped out before they could even enter the door. What is this? How can there be such a place in the northern region of the primordial world? It looks very strange. Didn't you see that those people are all dead in front of the door? If we want to go in, it should be very dangerous. Don't you feel that although it's hot here, there's always a gloomy feeling? Everyone discussed in low voices. Chu Liyue was about to walk forward when he was stopped by Elder Hua Feng. Wait, wasn't this brat a little too reckless? There were corpses everywhere in front of him, but he could still walk forward without changing his expression? Was he really not afraid of death? You stay back. I'll go and check out the situation first, Elder Hua Feng said in an unquestionable tone. Chu Liyue couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't argue with him. Elder, be careful. Elder Hua Feng nodded and walked forward. Everyone gradually quieted down and looked over. The closer he got, the more Elder Hua Feng could feel the astonishing pressure emitted from the door. The blood in his body seemed to be flowing at a much slower speed. He frowned. In the end, Elder Hua Feng stopped about 20 steps away from the door. He had already sensed the killing intent surging out from inside. His many years of experience told him that if he continued forward, it would be dangerous. However, he stopped for a moment before walking forward. Before his footsteps landed, a strong wind suddenly attacked him. Elder Hua Feng was shocked in his heart, and then he punched out. He actually chose to face it head-on. Boom! Two powerful forces collided fiercely. A loud sound was heard. Sand and stones flew everywhere. Strong winds howled. The red sand quickly gathered into a vortex in midair, erupting with a powerful suction force. Elder Hua Feng was caught off guard and took a step forward uncontrollably. His heart trembled. He retreated without hesitation. However, it was easy to come, but it wasn't so easy to leave. The sand contained abundant power, especially the sand near the door. When it gathered together, the power was so great that even Elder Hua Feng found it difficult to resist. Elder Shiru was about to step forward when she was stopped by the white-browed old man. Second miss, wait here for a moment. This old man will go. Before he finished speaking, his figure had already disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, everyone saw him appear beside Elder Hua Feng. Swish! He held a long saber in his hand and slashed down fiercely. A crack instantly appeared on the vortex that wrapped around Elder Hua Feng. Let's go! Elder Hua Feng saw the opportunity and immediately ran back with all his strength. However, just as the two of them were about to escape, the vortex formed by the red sand suddenly expanded. The vortex turned into a storm and surged forward. Digression, I don't know if I can reach the 5th update. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1351. Quickly retreat. Elder Hua Feng shouted loudly as he realized that something was wrong. A trace of shock flashed through Shiru's eyes. Then, she turned around without any hesitation. Let's go. It was better for them to escape at this time. Everyone had an intuition that something was wrong. So, they accelerated their retreat without any hesitation. However, it was too late. They didn't have enough time to escape. Suddenly, the red sand behind them rose with the wind and formed a huge barrier. It had completely sealed off their escape route. An elder's expression hardened as he leaped forward, raising his sword as he charged forward. Clang! With a crisp sound, the long sword in his hand actually broke into two pieces. The rebounding force hit him and sent his body flying. Then he fell to the ground. His complexion turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone who was about to follow him stood rooted to the ground in shock. This is just a collection of red sand. How can it be so terrifying? They didn't have time to react. Suddenly, a huge suction force surged from behind and wrapped them up. A young man from the meteor sect couldn't resist it. He fell down and was surrounded by the red sand. Then he was quickly dragged to the back. The coarse ground quickly cut through his clothes. He was frightened and struggled with all his might. He wanted to get out of this situation. However, he only aggravated the injury on his back. Faint bloodstains appeared on the ground wherever he was dragged. However, they were quickly absorbed and disappeared. Brother Zhao! Shi jumped up and chased after him. However, everyone was trapped in this space filled with red sand. Their strength was suppressed, and they couldn't use even half of their strength. Moreover, they weren't a match for this terrifying force even if they used all of their strength. Shi didn't have time to touch anyone. She had already lost control of her body. She wasn't the only one. Everyone on the scene was the same. They were like insignificant ants that were being dragged to the door. Chu Luiyue felt as if her body was being restrained by some kind of force. She couldn't break free and couldn't move. There was only a vast expanse of red in front of her. She couldn't see anything else. She felt as if her body had been squeezed out of shape. Her internal organs were squeezed together, and she felt as if they would explode at any time. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his hand. She looked down with difficulty and found that the back of her hand had been cut by a coarse piece of sand, and blood was slowly seeping out. Although she was only a rank 8 warrior now, her physical strength was comparable to a rank 9 warrior. This sand could actually cut through her skin and flesh so easily. One could only imagine what kind of shocking power it contained. A strong force hit her, and her chest shook violently. Blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth. At this moment, she suddenly understood how the corpses in front of the gate came to be. I can't be so passive anymore. Chu Luiyue clenched his teeth and circulated the force in his body with great difficulty. However, the energy around her was too strong, and the amount of energy she could use in her body was too little. If that was the case, he might not even be able to unleash a single god-stuffing fist. Right at this moment, another dragon roar entered his ears. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat as he looked up. This time, she finally heard it clearly. This sound came from the canyon. It came from the ravines on the cliffs, from the red sand that filled the sky, and from the corpses that were either exposed or buried deep underground. Right at this moment, Chu Luiyue's body suddenly erupted with a tyrannical wave of energy. Bang! The big door under the mountain rock opened with a sound. Digression, I'm getting off the train later. There's no need for that today. Tomorrow at noon, mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1352. Chu Luiyue's body was instantly sucked in. Bang! The sound of the door slamming shut came from behind. At the same time, Chu Luiyue's body was also thrown to the ground by a strong force. All the bones in her body felt like they were about to fall apart. It was painful. She propped herself up and looked up. This was an incomparably wide cave. On the red and gray rocks, there were several fist-sized pearls inlaid, emitting a faint glow and illuminating the surroundings. And on the empty ground in the middle, there was a tombstone. From a distance, Chu Luiyue could still clearly feel the heavy pressure emanating from the tombstone. She held her breath and looked around her again. There was no one. Other than her, there was no one here. And the door was tightly closed. No one else came in? Chu Luiyue frowned. She stood there and waited quietly for a moment, wanting to listen to the movements outside. But other than her heartbeat, there was no other sound. This thick and heavy door seemed to directly isolate everything from the outside world. Chu Liyue thought for a moment and finally walked forward. She stood 5 steps away from the tombstone. It was an ordinary-looking tombstone. It was grayish-white, thick, and simple. It was about the same height as Chu Liyue. But it was blank, without a single word. And other than this tombstone, there was nothing else here. It was flat and flat. Chu Liyue stared at the tombstone for a long time, but she didn't see anything unusual. Just as she was filled with doubts, the water droplet in her dantian suddenly began to spin slowly. That was where the ripple came from. Soon, the surrounding energy of heaven and earth began to surge towards her and quickly entered her body. Outside the door, the storm stopped. Everything calmed down. The people who were still wrapped in the red sand were now thrown to the ground. A moment later, Elder Huafeng was the first to come back to his senses. He calmed his breath, got up, and looked around. Although some people were injured, their lives were not in danger. After reading it, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. "Where's Chu Yu?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Chu Yu? Wasn't he just as one of the elders spoke, he was surprised to find that the figure beside him had disappeared. Taking a closer look, everyone was there except for Chu Yu. When the door opened just now, he seemed to have been sucked in. A low, uncertain voice came from the side. Just now, when the red sand filled the sky, everyone was trapped. They couldn't even guarantee their own safety, let alone the safety of others. Therefore, not many people witnessed that scene with their own eyes. What? Elder Huafeng's heart sank as he turned around. The red door was tightly shut. If he hadn't heard the sound of the door opening and closing just now, he wouldn't have believed this excuse. How could this be? Everyone escaped the calamity, only Chu Yu was brought in. What should he do now? Why does it have to be him? Although Chu Yu wasn't his disciple yet, in Elder Huafeng's heart, he had long treated him as his own disciple and doted on him. Now that he was in a predicament and his life and death were unknown, he was naturally extremely worried. Among us, he is the only rank 8 warrior. Could it be? At the side, Jiang Juan, who had just stood up, carefully wiped the dust and blood off her face and asked softly, "You mean Chu Yu is like this because his strength is too low?" Elder Huafeng asked in a deep voice. Jiang Jiwan could hear the dissatisfaction in his words and immediately shook her head. She explained nervously, "Elder, that's not what I meant. I'm just worried. After all, so many of us are still fine, but only junior brother Chu Yu. This really can't help but be suspicious. If it wasn't for this reason, what else could it be? Those who were able to come here, which one of them wasn't gifted? Which one of them wasn't outstanding? Only this Chu Yu, who was only a rank 8 warrior, actually followed them. Not only did he come, he even ordered everyone around, as if everyone should listen to him. Why? Now, even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore and directly locked him in. Who knew what kind of place was behind that door? It was still unknown whether Chu Yu could come out or not. Elder Huafeng sneered in his heart. He was very clear about Jiang Jiwan's thoughts. Regarding this matter, she didn't laugh out loud on the spot, which was already extremely restrained. In her heart, she probably couldn't wait for something to happen to Chu Yu. Even if he is only a rank 8 warrior now, his strength and ability are not something that ordinary people can compare to. If it weren't for him, we would probably still be pursued by those 9-tailed black crows. Jiang Jiwan's face stiffened. When Elder Huafeng said this, it was undoubtedly a slap to her face in public. "Everyone rest here first," Elder Huafeng ordered. Then he walked towards the door alone. Shiru immediately followed with a solemn expression. "Elder, what do you plan to do now?" "Find a way to open the door and bring Chu Yu out." Elder Huafeng's answer was simple and straightforward. Shiru frowned and glanced at the door. Of course, she also wanted to do this, but the key was, how could that door be so easy to open? Just by approaching it, she already felt the pressure. Without even trying, Shiru could guess that they couldn't open this door with their bare hands. But if they left it alone, Chu Yu was still inside. Thinking of the terrifying storm from before, Shiru still had lingering fear. I wonder what Chu Yu's situation is inside. Judging from the commotion just now, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with. No matter what, we have to give it a try. Elder Hua Feng said solemnly. As he spoke, he had already walked to the door. Then, he took a deep breath and raised his hands. Several streams of light flew out and quickly intertwined in mid-air, forming a huge silver Xian formation. Because he had just been injured, forcefully mobilizing his strength caused the blood in his body to surge. He slowly and firmly swallowed the bloody taste between his lips and teeth, his eyes staring fixedly at the door in front of him. Today, he had to break this door. At this moment, a stern shout was heard. "Who is it?" Shiru was stunned for a moment and turned around. In the canyon, a group of people was walking towards them. It was the group of people from Spirit Charm Mountain that they had just met. Shiru's heart skipped a beat. They had left and returned. They had clearly said that they were going to leave, so why did they suddenly come back? "So it's you guys." The elders recognized the identity of the people who had come and immediately became vigilant. "Why are you guys back?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1353. Elder, don't be so nervous. We're just here to take a look. We don't have any other intentions. The man in the lead cupped his hands politely. However, Elder Huafeng and the others didn't really believe this excuse. They had clearly left before, but now they suddenly came back. They didn't come back because they were bored. The people from Lingyun Mountain looked at each other. At first, they really wanted to leave, but after dealing with Liang Shaokong, they couldn't find the end of the path no matter how hard they walked. In addition, they wanted to know the situation here, so they came back in the end. Previously, they had stayed at a relatively far position, so they could clearly see everything that had happened just now. The most shocked one was that Chu Yu was brought in. This was because they had encountered similar dangers when they were here previously. However, at that time, almost half of their people were dead or injured, and the door didn't open. "Elder Huafeng, if you don't mind, we can help you try to open this door." The man in the lead didn't mind their vigilant attitude and continued. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked at each other. Elder Huafeng also frowned. Really? Just by relying on their own strength, it was indeed very difficult to open that door. If they could have external help, it would be great. Although there were only about 10 people on the other side, they were all powerful people. Perhaps they could really help. To be honest, we didn't open it just now. When we saw this door open, we felt regretful. If we can open it together, it will be beneficial for both of us, right? The man in the lead was honest and directly said his thoughts. Elder Huafeng stared at him for a while before finally saying, "Okay." Inside the door, it was silent. Chu Liyue sat cross-legged quietly with his eyes closed, constantly devouring the surrounding energy of heaven and earth. Unlike outside, the energy here was very pure, so there was no need to worry about the manic situation from before. The water droplets slowly rotated, restraining all the energy. It was like water flowing into the sea, calm and silent. As time passed, Chu Liyue's aura continued to strengthen. Soon it was night. Elder Huafeng and the others stood in front of the door with grim expressions. At this moment, the sky had completely darkened, and the surroundings were dark. Only the door emitted a faint red light. It was like the gates of hell, cold and eerie. The atmosphere was tense, and the air seemed to freeze inch by inch. "We have tried all kinds of methods, but we can't even get within 3 steps of this door, let alone open it." Elder Huafeng finally spoke, and every word he spoke was like a heavy stone that smashed into the hearts of everyone present. Many people had helpless looks on their faces. They had indeed tried their best. However, there were some things that couldn't be done. No matter how many methods he came up with, none of them worked. "Elder, are you planning to give up?" Shiru asked with a frown as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Elder Huafeng fell silent. Of course, he did not want to give up. Chu Yu was still inside, and he did not know whether he was dead or alive. He was the one who agreed to bring her out. If he couldn't bring her back safely, he would feel really bad. He was still waiting to take him as his disciple after the matter in the northern region of the wilderness was over. But they were indeed unable to open the door. Even if all the people from Spirit Grace Mountain moved together, they were unable to move the door in the slightest. At this moment, an elder at the side suddenly exclaimed. In such a quiet atmosphere, this sound was especially abrupt. Elder Hua Feng frowned and looked over. What's wrong? That elder raised his head in shock. He was holding a green jade token in his hand, and his fingertips were trembling slightly. Hua Feng, Dan Qing is looking for us. What? Elder Hua Feng was shocked and immediately ran over. What did Dan Qing say? Where is he now? That elder handed over the green jade token in his hand. Just now, my token sensed Dan Qing's news. Elder Hua Feng took the token and took a closer look. He found that there was indeed an additional star on it. Dan Qing and I once went out together. In order to make it easier for us to contact each other, we left this behind. But this matter has passed for many years. If I didn't see this just now, I would have almost forgotten about it, the elder explained in a low voice. His face was still filled with shock and joy. At the very least, this means that Dan Qing is still alive. As long as we follow this, we should be able to meet up with them. Everyone's previous dejection was swept away, and their spirits were much higher. After being in the northern region of the primordial world for so long, other than Jiang Jiwan, they hadn't seen anyone else from the academy appear. They were almost in despair. Now that Elder Danqing's news had appeared, they finally saw a glimmer of hope. Wait, this time won't be like the previous time, right? Another elder asked with some lingering fear. Previously, they thought that they had found Elder Bo Yen, but in the end, it was all for naught. If this time, probably not. This news can only be sent out by Danqing's own power. So there's basically no problem. Hearing this, everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Elder Huafeng's heavy and oppressive mood finally eased a little. But soon after, his brows furrowed again. It was a good thing that Dan Qing had sent back news. But on their side, there was still Chu Yu trapped inside? It was impossible to abandon Chu Yu here alone. The others followed his gaze and also thought of this matter. They couldn't help but fall silent and look at each other. Elder Hua Feng thought for a moment and returned the green jade token. Respond to his message and see if he can come over. We can't leave for the time being. That elder nodded. After saying that, he asked again. Hua Feng, how long do we have to wait here? If Dan Qing couldn't come over, then they couldn't wait here forever. After all, this was the first time they had received a message from the academy since they came here. Elder Hua Feng closed his eyes. Let's wait and see. In fact, he wasn't sure either. Xion, you said that Elder Dan Qing and the others were separated from you for the second time, right? That elder suddenly raised his head and asked. Jiang Jiwan was standing not far away, but it was as if she didn't hear anything. Her eyes were staring blankly at the ground, and no one knew what she was thinking. That elder raised his voice again. Ziyuan? Jiang Jiwan came back to her senses, and her expression was still a little absent-minded. But the situation was critical at that time, so we were separated. I don't know, where did Master and the others go? That elder nodded. Don't worry, we should be able to meet up with your Master and the others soon. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1354. After saying that, the elder noticed that Jiang Jiwan's face seemed to have turned paler. He couldn't help but ask with concern, Xing, what's wrong? Jiang Jiwan forced a smile. No, nothing. I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable. It was indeed difficult for her to feel comfortable in such a sorry state. Then you should rest well for a while. Originally, he was too lazy to say this, but who asked Jiang Jiwan to be one of Dan Qing's most beloved disciples? When they met and Dan Qing saw Jiang Jiwan's current state, he would probably be in a bad mood. They still had to give each other face. Thank you, Elder. Jiang Jiwan lowered her head again. No one knew that her hands were tightly clenched in her sleeves. Her sharp nails dug into her palms and almost bled, but she didn't feel anything. How could Master and the others are still alive? And they even contacted this side. What should I do? If both sides really meet, then how should I explain? Great nervousness and fear surged in her heart, causing Jiang Jiwon to almost suffocate. The night in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land was always very short. Everyone only rested for a while before the sky was already bright. After some rest, they recovered some strength. Elder Hua Feng stood in front of the door with his hands behind his back. His old eyes were fixed on the door. Elder, do you feel that the energy here has become much calmer and gentler since Chu Yu entered yesterday? Moreover, that dragon's roar hasn't been heard again. Shiru walked to Elder Hua Feng's side and asked in a low voice. Elder Hua Feng nodded thoughtfully. You noticed it too? If not for this, they probably wouldn't have been able to stay here peacefully yesterday. However, this calmness made him even more worried about the situation inside the door. It had been so long, but there was still no movement from inside. It's not a good idea to keep waiting like this. Shiru muttered and suddenly thought of something. By the way, Elder, does Rong Xiu know that you guys are here? He shouldn't know. Elder Hua Feng pondered for a moment. Before we came here, Rong Xiu didn't seem to be in the academy. What's wrong? Shiru shook her head. She just thought that if Rong Xiu was here, there might be a way. After all, his relationship with Chu Yu was not shallow. According to his temperament, he should have a way to deal with this kind of situation. Unfortunately, now, forget it, I'll take advantage of this period of time to adjust my body's condition. If Chu Yu still doesn't move after a while, Elder Hua Feng gritted his teeth. Chu Luiwei was naturally unaware of the situation outside. She put all her energy into cultivation. After some time, she finally opened her eyes slowly. Taizu, do you know what time it is now? In a trance, she actually felt that a long time had passed. Usually, Taizu would remind her in such situations. But this time, she waited for a long time but did not hear any response from Taizu. Taizu? Taizu? Chu Luiwei shouted in her heart again. Taizu's voice finally came slowly. About a month. Chu Luiwei was shocked. On one hand, it was because she thought that only a few days had passed at most. Who knew that it had already been a month? On the other hand, it was because Taizu's voice was exceptionally weak. Chu Luiwei had been with Taizu for so long, but she had never heard him speak in such a weak voice. It was as if all his strength had been exhausted, and he was only left with his last breath. Taizu, what's wrong? Chu Luiwei asked anxiously. I'm fine. I'm just a little sleepy. Taizu seemed to want to force himself to stay awake, but it didn't have any effect. In fact, ever since he entered this canyon, he had been feeling sleepy. However, he was originally a remnant soul, so logically speaking, it was impossible for him to feel this way. In addition, the canyon was filled with danger, so he didn't mention this to Chu Luiwei. Unexpectedly, as time passed, this feeling didn't lessen. Instead, it became more and more serious. Especially after entering this place, a sleepiness that he had never felt before surged up and almost drowned him. If Chu Luiwei hadn't called out to him, he would have fallen asleep and didn't know when he would wake up. Taizu, are you okay? Chu Luiwei was still worried. Ever since they met, she had never seen Taizu like this. Could it be that there's something wrong here? She couldn't feel it clearly, but she felt that it was similar to the cultivation places. However, judging from Taizu's reaction, that wasn't the case. It's nothing. I'm just sleepy. Everything else is fine. Taizu's voice became even weaker. Don't worry about me, I'll be fine after sleeping for a while, Chu Luiwei frowned. Then, if you feel uncomfortable in any way, tell me immediately. Taizu responded in a low voice. The surroundings fell silent again. Chu Luiwei looked at the wordless tombstone not far away. There was a crisp sound. A tiny crack appeared at the top of the wordless tombstone. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. She quickly took 2 steps forward. There was only a deep black in the crack. Other than that, nothing else could be seen. There were no energy fluctuations. However, Chu Luiwei couldn't calm down. This tombstone that appeared in the canyon of the northern region of the primordial world was at least 1,000 years old. After so many years, this tombstone had always been fine. Why did it suddenly crack after she came here for a short while? Chu Luiwei reached out her hand, but she instantly felt a biting cold aura surging out from it. Boom! Chu Luiwei quickly set up a barrier in front of her. Crack! The barrier instantly shattered. A terrifying aura came over and flew toward Chu Luiwei's face. Chu Luiwei's body flickered with a golden light, and the pure gold sacred armor was instantly summoned. In the next moment, that force collided with Chu Luiwei. Her chest shook, and her body was instantly sent flying. She fell heavily to the ground. Moreover, she drew a long distance above the ground. Bang! Her back slammed against the door, creating a loud bang. Pooh! Chu Luiwei spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the people who were waiting outside the door heard the commotion and looked at the door in shock. There's movement inside. Elder Hua Feng was delighted and was about to rush over. As long as there was a sound, it could basically prove that Chu Yu was still alive. However, just as he took a step forward, a few strange sounds suddenly came from both sides. He stopped in his tracks and looked up at the canyon in front of him. The mountain walls on both sides began to crack. A large piece of rock rolled down from above. A look of panic flashed across his eyes. Everyone, retreat immediately. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1355. Rumble. An earth-shattering sound rang out as the rock rapidly rolled down and smashed into the canyon. Then, before everyone could catch their breath, more and more rocks began to peel off the mountain walls and fall into the canyon. Bang, bang, bang. Countless rocks crashed into the canyon. No! Elder Hua Feng's eyes widened. Then, he watched helplessly as the path in front of him was completely blocked by these piles of rocks. As for the door, it was completely hidden behind the rocks, without the slightest gap in sight. He was anxious and immediately wanted to rush over. However, before he could move, more and more rocks began to crush towards him. Helpless, he could only retreat again and again. The situation of the people behind him was not any better, because the same situation was happening on their side. Someone cried out in alarm. This canyon is about to collapse. At the same time, Chu Luiwei slowly wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and stood up. Probably because of the protection of the pure gold sacred armor, she did not suffer any serious injuries. Standing here, she could vaguely hear the chaotic sounds outside. It seemed to be, something happened in the canyon? Chu Luiwei pursed her lips tightly. She glanced back at him. The door was tightly shut, and there was no sign of it opening. After a long while, the commotion gradually stopped. Her heart seemed to be hanging by a thread. I wonder what the situation outside is like. After thinking for a moment, she walked towards the tombstone. At this moment, the attack had already dissipated. The surroundings were quiet as if nothing had happened. Only the crack on the wordless tombstone reminded her of what had happened here. She stood in her previous position again. Suddenly, she was startled and raised her eyes to look around. The concentration of origin power here seemed to be much stronger than before. Chu Luiwei closed her eyes and sensed it carefully. Sure enough, she looked at the tombstone in surprise. Could it be, did this power come from there? What kind of secret was hidden inside? She pondered for a long time and finally decided to continue. With her current strength, it would be difficult for her to leave this place. She wanted to see what would happen in the end. The riot in the canyon finally stopped. Rocks piled up, and smoke and dust rose everywhere. Red sand flew all over the sky, making it almost impossible to see anything clearly. Everyone gathered in an open space that was barely able to support themselves and remained silent. Many of them had wounds on their faces and bodies, and they looked very miserable. Thinking about the situation just now, they were still in a state of shock. Who would have thought that the canyon would collapse all of a sudden? Everything happened too quickly. More importantly, The road leading to the door had been completely blocked. If they wanted to open the door, they would have to clear away all the rocks outside. But how was that possible? Even if all of them joined forces, it would still be impossible. Elder Hua Feng stared blankly ahead, and a trace of despair gradually surged in his eyes. There were several cuts on his face and body, and blood was flowing out. His clothes were also torn in several places. But at this moment he could no longer care about himself. In fact, his mind was completely blank as he looked at the scene before him. In this situation, how was Chuyu going to get out? Digression, I guess I won't have time to update today. I'll make up for it when I get back. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1356. Shiru asked in a daze. Elder, what should we do? The previous situation was already troublesome enough, and now this happened. It was almost hopeless to bring Chuyu out. Hua Feng, we can't stay in this place any longer. Behind him, an elder walked forward and said with a frown. Although the chaos had temporarily stopped, who knew if it would continue in the future? They had dodged quickly just now, but it didn't mean that they would be so lucky every time. Moreover, the door in front of them had been completely sealed. Everyone looked at Elder Hua Feng, waiting for his decision. After a long pause, Elder Hua Feng said, "Everyone, retreat first. I'll go take a look at the front." Elder Shiru called out to him, her heart filled with worry. Although she was also very worried about Chuyu, it was really dangerous to let Elder Hua Feng go alone. "It's not safe here. You guys leave first. I'll be back soon." Elder Hua Feng looked at her with relief, then turned back and said to the elder, Dan Qing will be here soon. Dan Qing might be here soon. Take them to a safe place first." "Okay." The elder responded, then turned around and left with his people. Shiru wanted to persuade him again, but after thinking about it, she swallowed the rest of her words. The people from Spirit Grace Mountain looked left and right. After thinking for a while, they finally decided to retreat first. Jiang Ji-1 retreated with everyone. After taking 2 steps, she couldn't help but look back. In the canyon, stones were piled up and smoke and dust filled the air. The people trapped inside should never be able to come out, right? Inside the door, Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged with her eyes closed, crazily devouring the energy around her. The water droplets in her dantian spun faster and faster. The surroundings were silent, and time slowly passed. Unknowingly, more and more cracks appeared on the tombstone. The concentration of origin power in the entire space also became denser and denser. Chu Luiyue seemed to be tireless, allowing the energy to pour into her body and flow along her limbs and bones. Until a certain moment, she vaguely felt an invisible barrier. Middle stage, 8th stage. Surprise flashed across Chu Luiyue's heart. Her cultivation speed here seemed to be much faster than in the outside world. Although it couldn't be compared to Pingmin Mountain, it was still extremely outstanding. Unknowingly, he had reached the point where he was about to break through. At that moment, Chu Luiyue had already sensed that the space-time flow here was different from the outside world. He did not know how much time had passed outside. Generally speaking, those who could form different time flow rates were all god domains. This thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. She quickly put these thoughts away and began to focus on preparing for the breakthrough. After a period of time, she gathered the force in her body and rushed toward her dantian. The sound of something breaking could be heard. Chu Luiyue had officially broken through to the middle stage, 8th stage. The origin power in his body surged wildly, almost boiling. She suddenly opened her eyes. A strange and resplendent light flashed through his black jade-like eyes. Elder Hua Feng walked over the pile of stones and finally arrived at the door. Of course, at this moment, the door was completely blocked. He couldn't even see the door anymore. It was quiet inside, as if there was no movement at all. Elder Hua Feng waited for a long time, and his heart sank bit by bit. After pondering for a long time, he took a deep look and turned to leave. This place is really haunted. It's dangerous everywhere. The primordial north? It's even more terrifying than I expected. No wonder there hasn't been anyone here for thousands of years. It's said that the heavenly square cauldron will appear here, but we haven't even seen a shadow of it after so long. I don't want to think too much now. As long as we can return safely, it's better than anything else. Everyone gathered together, resting while waiting for Elder Hua Feng to return. At the same time, they were discussing something in low voices. Sigh, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have brought so many people here. The elders of Lingxiao College also gathered together and couldn't help but sigh. In the beginning, everyone was too optimistic. It wasn't until now that they had encountered so many things that they finally realized that this was not a place to bring students to train. The danger here had far exceeded their expectations. I wonder where Bo Yen and the others are now. We can only hope to meet up with Danqing first. I wonder if anyone is with him. As an elder spoke, he suddenly looked at Jiang Jiwan. Zion, when you guys separated, didn't Danqing leave you any words? Danqing had always been very concerned about this favorite disciple of his. At this moment of life and death, he shouldn't have said nothing, right? Jiang Jun was in a daze for a moment, and she nervously clenched her hands in her sleeves. No. The situation was very chaotic at that time, so the elders all had regretful looks on their faces. Forget it, let's wait and see if he will come over. It would be best if there were others with him, or if there was news of Bo Yen and the others. Jiang Jiwan lowered her eyes. Hua Feng, how's the situation? At this moment, Elder Hua Feng had already rushed back. Everyone looked over in unison. Elder Hua Feng shook his head. Chuyu? He might not be able to come out for the time being. The surroundings were silent for a moment, but no one revealed any surprise on their faces. In fact, they had already expected this result. After a moment, Shiru asked. Then now, Elder Hua Feng took a deep breath. Let's meet up with Danqing first, then go find Bo Yen and the others. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1357. As soon as these words came out, many people were shocked. Then, you mean, as Shiru spoke, she glanced back at him meaningfully. She thought that Elder Huafeng would choose to stay here. How could Elder Huafeng not know what she meant? But according to the current situation, this was the best choice. They had been waiting here for a long time and had tried all sorts of methods, but they still couldn't open the door. Now, it was even more impossible. Only by finding Bo Yen and the others and working together might there be some hope. Although his heart was also filled with worry, there was no point in waiting here and doing nothing. The elders looked at each other and expressed their agreement. Shiru thought for a moment and finally nodded. Elder Huafeng looked at the group of people from Lingyun Mountain. He took a deep breath, took a step forward, and cupped his hands. Everyone, this old man has a favor to ask. The man in the lead was slightly moved. Elder Huafeng is too polite. If you have any instructions, just say it. Elder Huafeng said solemnly. Now that we have left, I'm really worried about leaving Chuyu here alone. Therefore, this old man would like to trouble everyone to stay here for a while. If Chuyu comes out, or if he encounters any situation, I would like to ask everyone to lend him a hand. Lingxiao College will be very grateful. Everyone from Lingyun Mountain looked at each other. They had already seen that Chuyu was very valued by Elder Huafeng and the others. But they didn't expect him to be so important that Elder Huafeng would personally plead for him. This Chuyu, where did he come from? Previously, they said that he was only a rank 8 warrior. Elder Huafeng is too polite. The man in the lead smiled and returned the greeting. Since you've personally asked, we will definitely help you. On one hand, they did want to stay here and see the situation. On the other hand, it was indeed a good thing for them to take this opportunity to get closer to Lingxiao College. This matter was a win-win for them, so there was naturally no reason to refuse. Thank you very much. Elder Huafeng heaved a sigh of relief. Even if it was for Lingxiao College's sake, these people would not sit idly by. Now, as long as Chuyu persevered inside, Elder Huafeng, this Chuyu doesn't seem to be your disciple. Why did you? The man leading the group from Mount Lingyun finally couldn't help but ask. Elder Hua Feng smiled. He works for Rongxiu. The members of Lingxiao College and the Meteor sect left together. After the people of Spirit Charm Mountain rested for a period of time, they decided to wait and see. They were simply too curious about what was behind the door. Furthermore, in order to enter that place, more than half of them had died. If they couldn't go in and check it out, they would feel some regret in their hearts. He just didn't know if the door would open again. What would happen to that Chuyu? Chu Luiwei had almost forgotten everything in the outside world. At this moment, she was completely immersed in her cultivation. After breaking through to the mid-stage of the 8th stage, she did not stop at all and continued to devour the energy around her. At that moment, the tombstone was covered in cracks. It looked as if it would collapse at any moment. As more and more cracks appeared on it, the concentration of the energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings had reached a crazy level. Chu Luiwei didn't even need to move, and the force rushed into her body. The aura on her body also rose rapidly. If it were anyone else, they might be overjoyed. However, Chu Luiwei gradually felt uneasy in her heart, because the energy here was simply too abundant. Every cultivator's physical body could only withstand a limited amount of energy. Once that limit was exceeded, the body would not be able to take it. More seriously, it might even cause a certain degree of damage. Although she had that water droplet and could devour all the excess energy. But who knew when this would end? Here, she could barely feel the passage of time. There was only so much energy that it was about to overflow. Under such worries, Chu Luiwei continued to break through and reach the peak of the 8th stage. However, everything didn't stop. Chu Luiwei could clearly feel that every part of her body was undergoing an astonishing change. And the tombstone was still emitting a steady stream of energy. The dense force gathered together and condensed into liquid on the stone wall above her head. It was on the verge of collapse. Chu Luiwei was especially worried about something. After such a long time, there was still no movement from Taizu's side. He seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. Chu Luiwei called out to him a few times, but he didn't respond. If it wasn't for the fact that she could feel Taizu's aura, she would have thought that something had happened to him. This place, it was indeed strange. Chu Luiwei pursed her lips. Perhaps Taizu had been here before? At a certain moment, the water droplet in Chu Luiwei's dantian finally stopped spinning. Chu Luiwei suddenly opened her eyes with a solemn expression, because she was about to try to break through to the 9th stage. For any cultivator, this was an extremely important hurdle. After her rebirth, Chu Luiwei had fantasized about this day countless times. However, she had imagined countless scenes, but she had never thought that she would be preparing to break through to the 9th stage in such a place and under such circumstances. Dumpling! Chu Luiwei called out in a low voice. A reddish-gold flame flashed past. Dumpling appeared in front of her. Protect me! Dumpling clearly realized that this matter was extraordinary, and her expression was very serious. Swoosh! Blazing flames flew, and Dumpling's figure instantly changed. She spread her wings, and her aura was astonishing. The temperature of the entire space seemed to have increased by quite a bit. Chu Luiwei raised her hands. Several streams of light flew out from her slender and fair fingertips and quickly intertwined and overlapped with each other. Soon, a huge Xian formation appeared on the ground. It protected her securely. At the same time, a golden light flickered on her body. That was the pure gold sacred armor that had been summoned. After thinking for a moment, Chu Luiwei took out Scarlet Heaven Sword and stabbed it into the ground beside her. Clang! With a crisp sound, Scarlet Heaven Sword trembled slightly and reflected a brilliant light. At this point, everything was finally ready. Chu Luiwei heaved a long sigh of relief. She could even clearly hear her own heartbeat. One beat, another beat. Finally, she closed her eyes and gathered all the power in her body. The power of the surrounding space began to surge towards her at an even more astonishing speed. At the same time, the sky above the canyon instantly darkened. The wind howled and dark clouds gathered. In an instant, the world changed. The people of Spirit Grace Mountain who were waiting in the canyon all looked up in shock. Digression, I'll probably be busy in the afternoon, so I'll continue to update in the evening. I'm not sure about the time, so it'll be a little late. Au revoir, mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 1358. What's going on? Someone couldn't help but mutter. Ever since they came to the northern border of the great desolate land, the sky had always been gray and they had never seen such a scene. It seems like someone is preparing to break through? As soon as these words came out, they were opposed. How is that possible? Isn't there only one Chuyu inside? We don't even know if he's dead or alive now, not to mention, we can't see what's going on inside. Maybe he's really breaking through? Who can say for sure? That's true. After all, didn't everyone come to the northern region of the Great Desolation to gain experience here? Everyone fell silent and looked at each other. The door was locked and sealed by huge rocks. They couldn't see it even if they wanted to. However, from the looks of it, it did seem like someone was about to break through. Let's wait a little longer. The man in the lead frowned and looked at it with one hand behind his back. When Elder Hua Feng and the others left, he asked them to take care of Chuyu. Now that Chuyu was involved, it was still unknown whether it was a blessing or a disaster. Did any of you see the situation clearly? He suddenly asked. Was Chuyu at the front? A tall and thin man beside him shook his head. At that time, Elder Hua Feng and Shiru of the meteor sect were in front while Chuyu was behind them. Then why was he the one who went in later? At that time, everyone was wrapped in the storm. That Chuyu seemed to have been suddenly swept in. And after he went in, the door immediately closed. At first, they didn't think so, but now that they thought about it, everything seemed a little strange. Let's wait and see. Yes. The man in the lead looked up at the gloomy sky. A storm was coming. Elder Hua Feng and even so many people from Lingxiao College were worried about Chuyu who was locked in the door. But perhaps, that Chuyu had his own good fortune. The people waiting in the outside world felt that every minute and second was unbearable. As for Chu Luiyue, she had completely ignored the time and was wholeheartedly preparing to break through to the 9th stage in one fell swoop. Her body was like a bottomless pit, constantly devouring the energy around her. This power flowed through her limbs and bones, nourishing every inch of her flesh and blood. Imperceptibly, the strength of every part of her body was increasing at an astonishing rate. The tombstone was already covered in cracks. Streaks of black ravines crisscrossed, as if they were filled with a terrifying power. Once released, it could devour and annihilate everything. The 8 lines on the water droplet were extremely beautiful. Boundless origin power surrounded him like a tidal wave. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes tightly, his thick and long black eyelashes trembling slightly. Just like the wings of a butterfly, a gentle flap could set off a huge wave of wind. Roar! A dragon's roar suddenly whistled out from the tombstone. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Even the power in his body seemed to be affected by the dragon's roar. It became restless, as if it wanted to break free from his body. Bang! Dumpling looked up to the sky and let out a shrill cry, melodious and holy. It fought against that dragon's might. With Dumpling's help, Chu Luiyue's situation immediately improved. She quickly condensed the origin power in her Danton and fiercely collided with the water droplet. Boom! A powerful impact spread out. It instantly filled Chu Luiyue's internal organs. An intense pain swept through her entire body. Digression, try to read as early as possible at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1359. The water droplet didn't move at all, but Chu Luiyue's body shook and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face quickly turned pale, and the force in her dantian faintly showed signs of collapsing. She forced herself to sit up straight and wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Then she regrouped and tried again. Boom! The 8 lines on the water droplet became brighter and brighter. However, the ninth line didn't show any signs of appearing. Chu Luiyue sorted out the force in her body while absorbing the energy from the outside world. Crack. In the middle of the tombstone, a crack ran from top to bottom. Something flashed through it, but it quickly returned to normal. Just as the situation changed, Elder Hua Feng and the others, who had already left, were already far away. They were in the canyon, walking in the opposite direction from before. From time to time, the sound of rocks rolling down could be heard behind them, forcing them to keep moving forward. After walking for a while, Elder Hua Feng finally couldn't help but look back. Of course, they couldn't see anything at this time. They could only see that the sky in the distance seemed to have become dark. What's going on over there? Elder Hua Feng frowned, feeling a little worried. It should be snowing, right? An elder beside him followed his line of sight and guessed. They had been here for so long and had indeed encountered several snowy situations. Every time the sky was like this. For some reason, Elder Hua Feng felt a little uneasy. After thinking for a moment, he retracted his gaze and looked at another person. Where is Danqing now? How far is she from us? That elder took out his green jade token and glanced at it before saying in surprise, "You're the one who gave it to me. Danqing seems to be rushing here. It shouldn't be long before we meet up." Elder Hua Feng heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. It was good for them to be able to find one more person. I only hope that Danqing is with Bo Yen and the others, even if it was just a little bit of information, it would be fine. Jiang Jiwan's footsteps stiffened. Master and the others are coming soon? She pondered for a moment before suddenly turning around and walking a few steps to Elder Hua Feng and the others. Elder Hua Feng, let's go up from that place in front? They were stunned. What? Jiang Jiwan smiled nervously. Do you see the sunken part of the cliff? I suddenly remembered that I seemed to have walked outside before. From there, the rest of the journey should be quite safe. When I asked you earlier, didn't you say that your mind was in a mess and you couldn't remember anything? Shi suddenly asked. She looked at Jiang Jiwan with a subtle look in her eyes. Why was it such a coincidence that he remembered it at this time? You didn't say that you walked past this canyon. If you really walked past it, it's impossible that you didn't see this canyon, right? Jiang Jun held her breath as a trace of resentment flashed through her heart. What she hated the most about Shi was that she was always so arrogant and always wanted to get to the bottom of everything. She was always against her. I did pass by here before, but I was only focused on running for my life and couldn't care about anything else. Now that he thought about it, it should be quite safe to return from here alive, right? As she spoke, Jiang Jun looked at Elder Hua Feng with some uneasiness. Elder, I'm doing this for everyone's sake. I don't have any other intentions. No one knows what's at the other end of this canyon. Are we going to keep walking here? Shi smiled coldly. It's better to keep walking forward than to go somewhere else, right? Who knows if it's really safe or... Elder Hua Feng raised his head to take a look. Let's go forward and see. Jiang Jiwan bit her lip, but she didn't dare to say anything and could only reluctantly agree. It seemed that she could only think of a way later. Rumble. At this moment, the ground of the entire canyon suddenly shook violently. What's wrong? Everyone immediately became alert and looked at the towering cliffs on both sides, afraid that the canyon here would collapse again. If the previous incident happened again, they probably wouldn't be able to withstand it a second time. Suddenly, Shi sucked in a cold breath. Elder Hua Feng heard that something was wrong with her and turned to look at her. Ruer, what's wrong? Shi didn't say anything. She just slowly raised her hand with a shocked expression and pointed to somewhere in front of her. Elder Hua Feng and the others looked over and were immediately shocked. A piece of jade-white skeleton was slowly emerging from the ground. The hard ground quickly cracked, and the cracks of various sizes were like a layer of spider webs. The skeleton arched from below and gradually formed a small hill. Shattered rocks rolled in all directions. The red sand poured down, making rustling sounds. This is... Elder Hua Feng opened his mouth. In an instant, countless guesses flashed through his mind. It turned out that this wasn't a broken skeleton. It seemed to be a whole piece. Gradually, the skeleton revealed its original shape. It was a long white bone, completely white and emitting a faint glow. Upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a transparent liquid flowing slowly inside. A wave of pressure gradually spread from above. "This isn't a human skeleton." Someone suddenly cried out in alarm. Then, the surroundings fell into a dead silence. At this time, of course, they had all realized this. However, if it wasn't a human skeleton, then could it be? There's more behind. The white-browed old man standing beside Sherrer said in a deep voice. Sherrer and the others looked back and saw that not far behind them, there was indeed a skeleton emerging from the ground bit by bit. Its shape and size were exactly the same as the previous one. The ground was still shaking. More and more bones appeared in the canyon. 1, 2. An elder looked into the distance and gradually lowered his voice. This was because the number of skeletons that appeared in the canyon had far exceeded their expectations. The positions of these bones were very exquisite because the distance between them was basically the same. And their appearance was almost exactly the same. "What the hell is this?" Elder Hua Feng looked from afar and almost couldn't believe his eyes. Who in the world would deliberately bury so many bones in the ground, and in such a pattern? Suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind. Wait, if this wasn't a human skeleton, then there was a high chance that it was a magical beast. There weren't many magical beasts that had such a huge skeleton. In addition, they had heard a dragon's roar here before. Roar. At this moment, a shocking dragon's roar sounded. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and were shocked on the spot. In the distance, a huge white bone dragon's head suddenly rose. The pressure was overwhelming. Digression, I don't know if I can continue writing today, but I'm fighting for it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1360. There was actually a dragon skeleton buried in the canyon. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. As the ground continued to shake violently, more and more skeletons were revealed. A vast and mighty pressure came crashing down. Elder Hua Feng quickly shouted, "Go up quickly!" Only then did everyone come back to their senses and began to run forward quickly. They flew up one after another and jumped out of the canyon. Although it was a world of ice and snow outside, it was very dangerous. But now, this canyon had clearly become a dangerous place. Elder Hua Feng was the last to go up. The moment his feet landed on the snowy ground, he quickly looked back and immediately sucked in a cold breath. Deep in the scarlet-red canyon, a massive dragon skeleton slowly rose from the ground. The ground cracked and the rocks collapsed. "There's actually a dragon skeleton buried here?" Sherrer was shocked and muttered in a low voice. But the dragon race values the bones of their own clansmen very much and never allows them to wander outside. How could it appear here? Moreover, it was such a complete skeleton. Someone cried out in surprise. Everyone looked back and saw a huge white bone dragon tail suddenly appear in the distance. A second dragon skeleton had appeared. At the same time, a deep dragon's roar reverberated throughout the world. Then, a third one appeared. The snowy plains shook and the dragon roared. The dragon's might was awe-inspiring. In the entire northern region of the wilderness, the people who were running in the vast snowy plains were all shocked when they heard this commotion. Countless men and horses began to rush over at high speed. Somewhere in the snowy plains, a man was running forward quickly. Hearing this movement, he was shocked and immediately turned his head to look. When he saw the white dragon bones that appeared one after another, he couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Immediately, he quickly walked a distance and arrived at an open space. A staircase leading down appeared on the ground. His figure moved and quickly disappeared from the ground. Following the stairs all the way down, he quickly arrived at the empty hall below. "Master." He nervously knelt on one knee. The surface of the huge copper mirror was soon filled with the color of blood. A hoarse and low voice sounded. "Did you bring Mu Qinghe back?" The man kneeling on the ground lowered his head. Replying to Master, "Mu Qinghe has already been brought back, but her body is already crippled. She is now being held in the dungeon, awaiting Master's judgment. But what? But the tomb is in chaos. Now, several dragon skeletons had awakened one after another. It won't be long before the surroundings fell into a dead silence. The voice in the bronze mirror fell silent. However, the man kneeling on the ground became more and more terrified. Chills ran down his back, and he almost didn't dare to breathe. Haven't those things always been fine? Why are they suddenly making a fuss? That voice became even colder and more terrifying. I don't know. I just found out about it, so... An incomparably tyrannical force suddenly rushed out from the bronze mirror and ruthlessly slammed into the face of the man kneeling on the ground. He didn't dare to dodge, so he could only take it, and his body fell to the side. On one side of his face, a bloody palm print was clearly visible. Blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. If you don't know, then go and investigate. For 1,000 years that place had been peaceful and quiet, and they had lived in harmony with each other. But now, yes. I'll go right away. The man panicked and hurriedly got up and left. After his figure disappeared, the blood on the bronze mirror surged, and it gradually calmed down after a long time. At this time, Chu Luiwei didn't know anything about the outside world. She tried to break through again and again, but it always seemed like she was just a little bit away from breaking through. Every time she failed, the power would collapse in her dantian, causing her internal organs to be in extreme pain. However, she would soon recover and try again. On the tombstone, cracks intersected with each other. Rich origin power continuously poured out from it. Chu Luiwei even began to feel the surrounding power completely enveloping her, creating a trace of pressure. She closed her eyes tightly, and her face gradually paled. Another dragon skeleton appeared. Elder Huafeng and the others were already shocked by everything in front of them, and they didn't know what to say. Ever since they discovered the first set of dragon bones, several more had appeared on the snowfield. Until now, there were as many as 5. Elder, did you notice that these things seem to be revolving around the place we just left? Shiru looked for a while and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Elder Huafeng frowned. Of course he saw it. These dragon bones seemed to be buried deep underground and gathered around. It was just that the dragon heads were facing different directions. This was what he was most worried about. From this situation, it was enough to see that there must be a shocking secret hidden behind the door. Chuyu was still inside. Return immediately. Elder Huafeng gave the order. Everyone was shocked. Huafeng, an elder, looked at him worriedly. It wasn't easy for them to come here, but now they had to go back? Everyone could see that that place was more dangerous than before. If they insisted on returning, everyone would be in trouble again. Elder Huafeng's expression was solemn. Even if we stay here, what do you think we can do? That elder was stunned and suddenly fell silent. That's right. Their current location was still surrounded by these dragon bones. If something really happened, they probably wouldn't be able to avoid it. Shiru seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. She turned around. The snow was vast, and the world was dark. Another dragon skeleton had appeared. In the middle, the pressure was getting heavier and heavier. It was as if something was about to break out. Her heart began to beat rapidly. Could it be, Elder, we'll go back with you? She said firmly. Second miss? The white-browed elder looked at her in surprise. Shiru paused. Perhaps the heavenly square cauldron is inside? Digression, she went to bed at 3 o'clock last night. When she woke up in the morning, she wrote a little to catch the train. Motion sickness was a little uncomfortable. It was already February. She would try to continue riding on the train in the afternoon. After returning home, she would start to make up for it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1361. Everyone fell silent for a moment. They had been through so many things recently that they had almost forgotten their original purpose for coming here. The heavenly square cauldron. They didn't realize it at first, but after Shirue's reminder, they instantly came back to their senses. With so many dragon bones surrounding this place, didn't it mean that there was a problem? Apart from the heavenly square cauldron, which was one of the 10 great sacred tools, what else could have such a standard? Elder Hua Feng's spirit rose. What you said makes sense. Moreover, with such a commotion, the entire northern region of the wilderness should know. Maybe Bo Yen and the others will also come. It was fine if they didn't know before, but now that they had guessed this possibility, they naturally had to go back. Let's go. Elder Hua Feng took the lead and turned around, walking along the edge of the canyon. The others quickly followed behind him. It was different from the previous nervous and uneasy mood. This time, everyone's hearts were filled with excitement and anticipation. The heavenly square cauldron might really appear there. I really didn't expect that things would take such a turn. The few youths of the meteor sect gathered together and whispered something. If the heavenly square cauldron really appears there, then wouldn't Chuyu hit the jackpot? That's right. There were so many people here, but only Chuyu went in. At that time, I thought that he was unlucky, but now, maybe it's a great opportunity. What kind of treasure is the heavenly square cauldron? Countless experts are vying for it. If it really ends up in his hands, then he really hit the jackpot. Alas, if only I was the one who went in. Jiang Jiwon walked forward at the side and heard most of these words. She couldn't help but frown. No one knows what's behind that door. What if we don't meet the so-called opportunity and pay with our lives? Wouldn't everything be in vain? For a moment, Jiang Ziyuan couldn't help but blurt out these words. Those people all looked at her with subtle expressions on their faces. One of them said, Jiang Ji, why do I feel that you seem to be hoping that something happens to Chuyu? Isn't he also a student of the High Heaven Academy? Speaking of which, he seems to be your junior brother? Jiang Jiwon's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly smiled. How could that be? I'm just worried about him. It was better to be safe than sorry. Elder Hua Feng and the others also think highly of Chuyu, and I also admire him very much. Then, she frowned and a trace of worry appeared on her face. Now, I just hope that everything goes well for him. No matter what happens to the heavenly square sacred cauldron, as long as he can come out safely, it's fine. If it was in the past, she would have looked so pitiful that no one would have the heart to scold her. Unfortunately, her face and body were covered in messy bloodstains and dust. Her entire person looked battered and exhausted. How could anyone feel the slightest bit of pity for her? What's more, Elder Hua Feng and Shiru's attitude towards her had always been very clear. They weren't stupid. Thus, they looked at each other and smiled meaningfully. How would we know what you're thinking? The mockery and ridicule in his eyes were undisguised. Jiang Jiwon's expression suddenly became somewhat unsightly. She originally wanted to argue, but in the end, she swallowed her words. She clenched her teeth and suppressed the anger and resentment in her heart with great difficulty. These people were merely lackeys of the meteor sect. What qualifications did they have to throw a tantrum at her? She lowered her eyes and concealed her emotions. However, her heart was already in turmoil. If Rong Xiu had chosen her as the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower, how would these people dare to look down on her? Although the Jiang family of the Immortal Water Tomb was the head of the 28 divisions, it was still limited to the Yuntian Tower. If it were outside, the first-rate families and clans of the Divine Ruins world wouldn't even put them in their eyes. Even she was looked down upon. In such a situation, she still had to be humiliated. In the end, it was all that Sheng Guanyu's fault. If she had the chance in the future, she would definitely investigate that slut's background. She would return all the torture she had suffered during this period of time tenfold, 100-fold. The group continued to move forward for a distance. The sound of dragon roars echoed around them. The closer they got, the more shaken they felt. When they were about to return to their previous position, there were already 7 sets of dragon skeletons. Fortunately, although these dragon skeletons were powerful, they didn't attack anyone. However, everyone knew that this was just the calm before the storm. Elder Hua Feng looked forward and suddenly narrowed his eyes. Someone is coming. Everyone was stunned and hurriedly looked over. Indeed, they saw a group of people walking over from the snowy plains. "They look familiar," Shuruppa muttered. The white-browed old man standing at the side looked over and reminded them. "Second young miss, those people seem to be from the Golden Wing sect." Elder Huafeng's heart tightened. Previously, because of the Scarlet Heaven Sword and Jean Lei's death, they had a very unpleasant relationship with the Golden Wing sect. He didn't expect to meet them so soon. The people from the Golden Wing sect also saw Elder Huafeng and the others. The man in the lead paused for a moment before continuing to walk over. In the end, he stopped 300 feet away from Elder Huafeng and the others. There was silence. The two sides confronted each other, and there was a subtle flow of air. "Elder Huafeng, long time no see. How have you been?" The leader was a middle-aged man, but he was not the sect master of the Golden Wing sect. He was his younger brother, Jean D. As he spoke, he looked at Shuruppa next to him. "The Meteor sect is also here. Second young miss, you are so bold." Elder Huafeng also cupped his hands and said lightly, "Yes, it's been a long time. It seems that we are quite fated with the Golden Wing sect. Why didn't your sect master come this time? If he could bring back the Heavenly Square Cauldron, it would be enough to be the most precious treasure of the sect." He didn't believe that the Golden Wing sect was not interested in it. Jean D laughed. "My elder brother is in seclusion. Naturally we will come. Why, Elder Huafeng seems to be. Don't misunderstand. This old man is just asking casually." Elder Huafeng smiled. After all, the northern region of the primitive desolate land is vast. It is indeed a coincidence that we can meet. Jean D raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly. "There is such a big commotion here. Everyone should be here, right?" As he spoke, he turned his eyes and looked at the place in the middle of the dragon bones. This place, maybe the top treasure of the northern region of the primitive desolate land, is hidden here. Elder Huafeng put his hands behind his back and didn't say anything. At this moment, there was another commotion in the distance. An elder glanced over there and then shouted in surprise, "Senior brother, you're the leader of the group. Dan Qing and the others are here." When Jiang Jiwan heard this, her heart seemed to be clenched tightly. She looked in that direction. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.